All right, you ready?
Yes, I am ready. Everyone is ready. We are going to have a very efficient meeting. From this point forward, I'm sure of it.
Okay, thank you. I really appreciate it. And then I'm just going to ask our city manager, Doug, will you keep me on track with timing on each item so I can be better about being efficient?
I'll do my best.
So, thank you so much. Okay, we're going to start out with the Pledge of Allegiance, and and it looks like Councilwoman Breckus is completely ready to go with that with her flags. So I'm going to have her lead us in the pledge.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, good job. Okay, Madam Clerk, I'm going to send it to you for the roll.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Roll call for the Reno City Council for November 12th. Breckus?
Here.
Dewar?
Here.
Delgado?
Here.
Weber?
Here.
Garden?
Here.
Reece?
Here.
Peavy?
I am here.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. With that, you do have a quorum of the Reno City Council.
Okay, thank you so much. Madam Clerk, I'm going to send it back to you for public comment.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It should be noted for the record, public comment in this general section is reserved for items not on our agenda today. Anything received from the previous agenda after the time in which we did close or something that is not on our agenda is what will be noted. We received 33 comments on various items, Madam Mayor, for general public comment. These have been submitted to council and are part of the record. It should be noted that each of these 33 comments were in support for Henry Sotelo for the Reno Municipal Court Judge. Again, council will note this item is not on your agenda today, so these are in general public comment. With that, Madam Mayor, we have no voicemails, so we can now transition to approval of your agenda. I'll send it over to the manager with any changes that he may have.
Thank you, Madam
All
Clerk.
right, Mr. Doug.
Madam Mayor, we have a couple of items that need to be pulled. Item B3, contractor's given us another 60 days to work through some of the issues we've got going on there, so you'll see that again in January. Item C2 and LD1, the ice rink, which is on both the City Council agenda and the Redevelopment Agency agenda. That's just going to be pulled because we can't get that deal done. And then item D2, which is the waste management franchise agreement. We're not quite there. We've got a few more kinks to work out, but we will bring that back when it's ready.
Okay.
Approve.
Sounds good. I have a motion to approve, and I have a second. It looks like from Councilman Weber. I think you're trying to come off mute. Okay. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, motion carries unanimously.
Madam Mayor, your first item is your consent agenda. There's no public comment for any item on consent. I'll return it to council for any items they'd like to be pulled for discussion.
Okay, thank you so much. At this time, I'm going to ask Councilman Reece.
Nothing.
All right, Councilman Delgado.
Nothing.
Councilwoman Jordan.
None.
All right, Councilwoman Breckus.
B2 and B4, please.
And then Councilman Dewar.
Yeah, just a quick question on B5.
Okay. All right, can I get a motion to accept? What about you, Councilman Weber? Nothing?
Madam Mayor, I have nothing.
Okay, great. Thank
Move
you.
to approve.
Thank you. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, let's send it to B2. I'm going to go with you, Councilwoman Breckus.
Yeah. I guess my question is for the manager, because in my briefing, I had asked for a copy of the Tumworth master plan, and I didn't see that get loaded up.
No, I've asked Mr. Flansburgh to prepare a memo for you as to where that master plan stands. It's in draft form, and you should be receiving that in short order. I apologize that you don't have it.
Okay. Okay. I mean, I have a little bit of discomfort embarking on a plan of expenditures without knowing what the big plan is for Tumworth. And just want to highlight the concern, where is that master plan? I understand it's been maybe in a draft format for 9 months. So maybe even, I'll wait for that memo, but I do have our CIP in front of me. And, ideally, the CIP is somehow informed by the master plan for Tumworth. And it shows this fiscal year we're going to spend $8.3 million over at Tumworth. And this is a contract of our share for $436,000 in design for a reuse pump. But I don't see that reuse pump on the CIP. So have we already kind of gone away from the CIP that we adopted back in July for Tumworth?
Why don't we get Mr. Flansburgh on and he can answer your questions sort of more pointedly.
At this time, we will promote John Flansburgh, Director of Public Works, over. And Mr. Flansburgh will be able to answer your questions directly.
Okay.
Good morning. I heard the question for Councilman Reece in regards to the CIP. This is on the approved CIP for Tumworth. The importance of this project is that this is the main reuse pump that is used to pump out the effluent to all of our reuse sites for irrigation use, both for City of Reno and for Sparks. It's our main pump, and this is in need of rehabilitation. It is on the approved list of capital improvements for Tumworth and is presented to you today for award for the consultant agreement.
So, thank you. I see $13 million in the CIP, and I'm just going to leave the master plan that's, been kind of in the works, I guess a memo's coming. I think $13 million. I see about 8 projects or maybe a dozen projects. How much of this $13 million have we already spent in this FY?
We actually have spent very little. In fact, we were talking about at the last Tumworth meeting that a joint coordinating committee meeting, that it looks like we will be underspending. We've held some projects up due to the master plan, and we've actually had great success with nutrient removal, working through one of the early action items that was identified by Brown and Caldwell in the facility plan. And with that, we recognize it will re-inform us of timing of projects. And so we are redoing our Tumworth CIP based on the facility plan itself. And I think you'll see that information when I provide you with the executive summary. At least you'll see why the Tumworth plan has been on draft. We're waiting for the outcome through a winter cycle because of dealing with the biology out there. We have different effectiveness in summer versus winter. But if things go the way that it appears it will be going, it will inform the draft or the master plan quite a bit in terms of pushing or delaying some of the projects we thought we may have to do sooner.
Okay. I mean, I don't see this. I know this is just design, but I don't see effluent reuse pump on the CIP. I see other things that maybe it's captured in, but I don't see it. Is this, I mean, if you use a 10% design consideration, this could be maybe like a $6 million deal. Is it for next FY?
Turned down mine. So how is Sean doing?
Yes, so it is actually, the consultant agreement is for the design, which will inform us of the cost of the capital project, which will be next fiscal year.
Okay. Well, maybe we can talk offline, because I do think design should be on the CIP, so it's a queuing you ahead. I think that I've done, I think that's the best practice for CIPs, but I just don't see this one on the CIP, so thank you.
Councilman Reece, do you want to give us a motion?
Sure. If there's not any other questions on this item, I will make a motion.
Okay, please.
I make a motion.
All right, thank you. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, now we're going to jump to B4, and I think that's back to you, Councilor Reece.
Yeah, this is the use of CARES Act funds that I was really promoting for, and I'm very excited to see it perfected. It is going to fund some of the daycares and childcare facilities, which I think some are, kids who aren't compulsory into school, but I think some of them also expanded to be remote learning centers for kids who are, in the school district. So I think it's helping working families quite a bit. But I've had a number of questions because I feel like I keep coming up with ideas of CARES Act money and here, oh, we can't go there, we can't go there. And this was one that you thought we couldn't use because they were never shut down. They were deemed essential, and the CARES Act funding didn't allow for funding of essential businesses. That was an early reading I got from you, Mr. Shaver. Did we kind of probe the federal guidance a little bit to come to this point?
Thank you so much for the question. For the record, Dylan Shaver, Chief of Staff to the City Manager. Perhaps there was a miscommunication on our part, Council Member, and I apologize for that. What did not work with your initial line of inquiry was the city's business relief program. As it was constructed and as council approved it, would not have allowed a daycare to apply for that reason. So what we did was we set up a separate program at your request that would allow us to take a different stream of funding and dedicate it in that manner, which is before you here today.
Okay. And then how many, you haven't opened up application, or the children's cabinet is the pass-through?
That is correct. And if you have questions for them, Ms. Young from the cabinet is here. But the structure of the agreement is they are just going to pass through immediately the funds to all the licensed providers in the community. So their application process person.
Okay. I don't have questions. I'm just very excited. I even went outside and talked to Washoe County staff about this because they oversee the child care, regulate the child care facilities in this region, but we got the lion's share of the COVID fund. So I felt, even though it's their regional responsibility to look after that, niche market, which provides so important services, I thought it was important for us as a city to bring that money through. So I don't know, maybe Ms. Young-Sarah, do you have an idea how many daycares you'll be able to get to? And also, are some of those expanding to the kids who are in the compulsory grades? I heard something maybe if you have a sibling, they were going to do that, because some kids are having a hard time being at home, doing school online. It's and this was going to be some of them are going to allow for a place for them to do that.
Hi, this is Kim Young from the Children's Cabinet. Thank you for hearing this today. The intention of these funds were to help support the child care providers that are either providers in centers or family, friend, and neighbor providers providing care in the home settings. And what they are struggling with are the day-to-day expenses of keeping their centers open and being accessible to families in need. So things like being able to have materials to keep the kids socially distanced while in there, so additional tables and chairs and things like that, and materials so that the kids can be separated the way they need to be. And also for things like the PPE that they need, the gloves and the masks and that are incredibly expensive for these providers so that was the intent of these funds.
Okay, great, thank you.
All right, any other questions from council members? Seeing that they're not, nice to see you, Kim. Hope you're doing well.
Oh, thank you so much.
Oh, yeah. We're grateful for all you're doing. I know you guys are working so hard over there, so great work. Okay, I need a motion.
I'll move.
Okay, thank you. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Congratulations.
I thank you on behalf of child care providers. This is a win.
Yay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yay. Thanks, Kim. Here. Okay, now we're going to head over, I think this is Councilwoman Dewar, am I right?
Yeah, right. If you could just give me get Megan on here for just a sec. I don't know if she's in the waiting room or not.
She should be in the waiting room.
We are in the process of moving her over right now. So Megan Berner and Dylan Shaver will be able to answer any questions on this for you, Councilmember Dewar.
Okay, great. A really brief question, and I think I got most of it at that briefing, but this is an additional $50,000. All I wanted to know, Megan, is this $50,000 something that we considered at the RAC already, the last meeting, or is this a new one? Because we've been talking about it at almost every meeting, so I think I lost my place.
Sure. Good morning, Council and Mayor. Megan Berner, Acting Manager of Arts, Culture, and Events, for the record. This is what we discussed at our last RAC meeting, so
Okay.
It is one $50,000 allocation.
Okay, and this is the one, and the ultimate decision from the RAC was they recommended doing it to Sierra Arts. I thought they suggested splitting it in three. That's where I was a little.
They split it into four. So they
Okay.
had $200,000 and they gave $50,000 to 4 different organizations to distribute to artists.
But this one had to come back. That's where I'm a little confused, I guess.
Yes, I believe it had to come back because there was a previous $100,000 allocation to Sierra Arts, and they wanted to put it into one agreement for simplification.
Oh, okay. Well, that explains it. That's where the confusion came. I appreciate that. All right. Well, with that, Madam Mayor, I would move to approve this item.
All right, thank you so much. I have a motion and
Second.
a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay, good job. Hi, Megan. Hi. Nice to see you. Thank you. Good job, good job. Okay, sending it back to you, Madam Clerk.
Madam Mayor, moving on to your public hearing, item C1. This is a public hearing for collective bargaining agreement between the City of Reno and the Reno Firefighters 731.
Okay, thank you so much. I will now open the public hearing, Madam Clerk. Has proper notice been given and any correspondence received and any public comment? Sending it to you.
Madam Mayor, proper notice was given, no correspondence was received, and no public comment is ready, we did not receive any for this.
Okay, great. Staff presentation.
At this time, Madam Mayor, we will be moving over Debbie Lochner to be able to answer some questions.
Great, sounds good. Just let me know.
So while we wait for the finance director to come off mute, Dylan Shaver, again, Chief of Staff to the City Manager, appearing before you here is a resolution to the long-standing dispute between the City of Reno and the International Association of Firefighters, Local 731. This is the majority of our fire personnel. As you know, as with this organization for going on a couple of years now, and we're actually about to go into negotiation for the next contract here. And there I see I've stalled enough. Ms. Lochner is available to answer. Do you have about the specifics?
So was there a specific question? I was on call.
Okay. No, I think you're required to give a presentation on this item. Am I right, Madam Clerk?
Madam Mayor, as it is a public hearing, general practice is just to get some high-level bullet points on what it is that council is approving today, though I'm sure each of you have reviewed the staff report as was presented. However, I'm sure that Ms. Lochner can give you some quick touch points before council takes a motion.
Okay, sounds good. Any council members have any questions on this item? No? One of the things that I had that, and everyone should know this about me, because I've been very, very vocal about it. What I was really disappointed to see, and first of all, You know, big supporter of our fire and our police department, so grateful for everything they do. And so, you know, this is not a negative in any way, but one of my biggest concerns, where I've been saying this in all these contracts, is there is no automatic aid that I noticed anywhere throughout this contract. And I just keep believing that if we can do anything to provide the best possible service, I think automatic aid is so critical. I didn't see it in there. Am I missing something, Deborah?
No, you are not. That's not in the contract. It's an operational, it was not part of the parameters of what we negotiated with the IAFF for this past contract. We do know that there is a study out there with about 32 recommendations, most of which require a scope of bargaining. So that is on our radar. And when we reopen the negotiations with this group come February, I believe, is when we have to provide our notice to negotiate the successor contract. We will be coming back to the council to understand exactly what you would like us to negotiate in that contract, whether it's, you know, should be in a contract, the bargaining unit of contract, or it should be something else, and we'll have those discussions. But that was not part of this initial negotiations for this particular contract.
Yeah, and I'm really disappointed to see that. Unfortunately, really disappointed. Okay, any other council members?
If I could.
Yes, go right ahead.
If I could, automatic aid probably does belong in an agreement with other entities and not with the bargaining group. And so if that is the preference and direction of the council, we will pursue that with our neighboring entities.
Yeah, and we do need to bring back the studies that we did as well. I know COVID kind of got us off track, and unfortunately that might have been a little hiccup in doing this contract as well, because there were certain things in there that I think needed to be probably addressed to make sure, you know, for all of us and even for their concerns, because I'm certainly supportive of what they do. They have very, very difficult jobs. So I'm hopeful that is something that is a conversation, because everyone knows I felt so strongly about that. Okay, any other questions? Councilman Weber, go right ahead.
Thank you so much. I think that this is a huge item to be talking about today, and I know that we're just moving into a vote, but I think it's really important. Sorry, my little camera is not working here. I'm not working my camera very well. Could we just have a brief presentation with the highlights? I think for the public sentiment, they need to know what we're talking about. And I know this is an issue that I've been contacted by many folks about this contract, and I just think it would be important to maybe just have Ms. Lochner go through the highlights of this contract.
Sure, happy to do that. So this contract does follow the settlement pattern that we had with our other groups. It provides a 2.5% wage increase retroactive back to the beginning of the beginning of the contract. So and then it splits in the second year. Splits the raise 1.25 July 1st, and then 1.25% increase in January, all of that being retroactive. It also adds a sliding scale special pay for the EMT. The original contract had that for when they step up into these other positions that they get paid as a captain. We had a PERS audit. PERS said that is not PERS compensable the way it is written. So they came up with a sliding scale that, based on years of service, gives them a different pay rate for those both paramedic and EMT services. That complication actually requires that we add an additional payroll technician to the city's FTE count in order for us to manage special pays throughout the entire city. In addition, because it's retroactive, we are likely going to pay a penalty with PERS, but this was very important to the group as it had been, the raises would not be PERS compensable if we did not do it retroactive. And the final piece is a change in their uniform allowance, where the current amount of $750 a year will be upgraded to $1,500 a year, and they will get. They also get a small payment each pay period for their uniform maintenance. That will go away. That's all effective on the last day of the contract, so it really doesn't have a monetary effect until going beyond this contract. That puts them also more in line with the uniform allowance that the police officers have.
Thank you. And so can I just ask two questions? One question is how far back retroactively? You say it goes retroactively. Did you say it's this year or last year?
It's the entire, so it's 2.5% from July 2019 through June 30th of 2020. And then it's a 1.25% increase from July 1st, 2020 through the end of the calendar year. And then there will be an additional 1.25% increase that will be effective January 1st. But the EMT sliding scale is also retroactive, so we have to go back into each individual person and apply the appropriate rate. The stipulation is that we do this within a 90-day period, the retroactive pay.
Okay, and a legal question would be, and I don't know who would respond to this, I have one more question, and that is, what if we didn't accept the contract today? Happens then.
For the city attorney's office. I mean, is the question, what if we don't do it today versus what if we don't do it at all? What is?
Yes. Yes.
So,
we didn't accept it today.
well, if you didn't accept it today and you were going to bring it back at a later date to get additional information to more inform your vote, you can do that. If it doesn't come back, then we're if it doesn't get approved, then we're looking at potentially, I think, at this point, going to like arbitration over it. There's a fact finding in arbitration. So.
Okay, so I don't think that we need more information. I think we've heard this, and thank you, Madam Mayor, for allowing this to. I think it was important to have it on talked about a little bit here on the meeting, and I am just concerned. And I think it's really hard to support moving forward, but I'm going to do so if the vote's there. I just think this is a tough situation, and everybody else participated in negotiations and worked it through, and I just. It's tough, and we've come a long way. Believe me, I understand that we've come a long way, but there's also the fact that what does this look like to the rest of the bargaining units? I think that's a really tough thing, and it shows that you can get away with just holding out, just hold out. Get there. So thank you.
Let me ask you from your expertise. I do worry, about financial implications because, look, COVID has changed everything. And it's not that I don't love my fire, and I know that they take it very personal, and that shouldn't be the way that it is. They're all wonderful, and we're super grateful. I think we have probably one of the best fire departments in the country. Every single one of them. And it's not that they're not deserving, they absolutely are. But what I do worry about is, will they be able to bring on more firefighters? because I think that's really important too, because as we know with COVID, their jobs are really, they're hard, they're stressful, right? So I worry about, do they, with the staffing levels, and then also, making sure that other departments, we can be firing on all cylinders. So from your standpoint, Deborah, can you give us sort of an overlay of, the financial piece of this?
Well, sure. We planned for this. So we did set aside the money from the 1920 fiscal year to pay for this. We set aside $1 million. It's a little bit less than that. We also, when we budget, we included a 2.5% increase in the current year budget because that was the settlement pattern we had from the other units. So we built that into the budget. So overall, outside of the additional payroll tax and a possible PERS penalty, everything that for this contract was built into this existing budget. And we plan for it as we're developing next year's budget as well. We plan for what do we see that, we do have 3 units up for negotiation, and we'll be looking at how are we going to budget the staff when those contracts will not be settled while we're developing the budget. So we do put that in our planning.
Yeah, and will we be able to bring on more firefighters?
At this point, I don't think next year we will be suggesting we bring on any new staff. We are still working on, a cutting of the budget, and that cut is likely to be retained for at least an additional year, if not 2. We're looking at the property tax. We won't get that until around February. We'll start having some discussions with the county right after the first of the year to see what they're seeing. Because that's our biggest concern. We are starting to see the C-tax go down, but it's still above what we received last year. It's all going to be dependent on the community and if we're able to stay open or not. We're running some scenarios on what that would look like and what we might need to do to address any additional budget shortfalls from a subsequent closure. So we are planning for all these things and working on scenarios and how we would manage through it.
So it sounds like to me we still are not quite sure of what the future sort of looks like as well. That's one of my concerns too. Everything is so uncertain at this time. And again, I love my firefighters, and I know they take everything incredibly personal. And this, is not personal in any way because, like I said, I think we have the best in the country. But I'm also biased too. But I love my firefighters and my police officers now more than ever. With COVID, things have been challenging, right? I know this contract has been really, really hard to get done. But I will say, for me, the biggest sticking point, honestly, is the automatic aid. It should have been in there in some capacity. So I'm not there, but. Go ahead, Councilwoman Dewar, and then I'm going to ask for a motion.
Madam Mayor, I have a question as well.
Yeah, go ahead.
So is Councilwoman Jordan.
Go ahead, Councilwoman Jordan.
If Naomi was first, she could go. Oh, that's fine. I was just going to say, Madam Mayor, I think I've been through this for about 1.5 years, and while it's not perfect, I know that we're going to be beginning contract negotiations almost immediately in our lifetime, within a very short few months. And I would like to put this to bed, frankly. I think that there's been a lot of back and forth. I think there's been a lot of give and take. I think that this is far from where they hoped to start, but it's also doesn't address all the issues that we've all brought up from time to time. So, it would be my inclination to move forward. I absolutely... how I feel about automatic aid. I have been right there with you, in many, many regards. So that's just my feeling today, but I'm also willing to just hear what everybody else has to say.
The other thing I want to point out, certainly too, I'm sure we have, IFS on the phone. One of the biggest, I don't know if you want to call it accomplishments, but whenever Councilwoman Breckus and myself and Councilman Delgado and Councilwoman Jordan were elected. How long ago has that been now? 6 years? I don't know. As you know, the relationship was very tumultuous. There was a massive fire divorce. There were a lot of political infighting. And one of the things that we really wanted to do as new city council members, it was, conversations that we were all very, very committed to, is to make sure that we started a new page with our fire department and bring that relationship back around, because we know how important you are. And I just want to point out, I think we have been successful in doing that. And I think, we absolutely value you. And I also think there are not many things that we disagree with you on. Am I right, council members, that when we first walked into this new landscape, and it was a very, very challenging environment, right? The relationships were, very, very severed. And so I just want to remind everyone that I'm proud of this council for being supportive of our fire department. And I think we, it's a better day for us with our fire department, quite frankly. And again, I think there's a lot of issues that we absolutely agree on. I would say 90% we're on the same page. And sometimes we might not be, and we just can't get there. And so it's nothing personal, but I'm just not. So anyway, I'm going to send it to Councilwoman Jordan.
Madam Mayor, and then if we could also, you said their firefighter representatives on, I would love to just hear from them too.
My hand's open. My hand is raised too.
Okay, I'll come back to you. Councilwoman Jordan.
Thank you very much. My question is to Ms. Lochner, and this is going to go back to, I think I've been a bit of a broken record on, cut early so that you don't have to cut so severely later on. And I'm still very fearful that we are going to be facing that in short order. Debbie, when we talk about the opening of the contracts and the consecutive quarters of negative growth, can you remind me of what that criteria is?
So to reopen most of our contracts, we've got a recession language into the contracts. If there's 2 quarters of negative growth, we could reopen the contracts and discuss just the salary articles.
And do we have two consecutive quarters of negative growth?
I would have to go and check that again. I think it's on our 20-year spreadsheet, but we have been having the discussions with the bargaining units, on our financial situation, and we've been meeting with them monthly. So just to keep them informed and to let them know if it comes to a situation where we may need to ask them for something.
So I'm not sure I got an answer on that.
I don't know. I'd have to go back and look on the on our 20-year spreadsheet to see if we hit the second quarters. I believe we did get 2 quarters of negative growth, but that the last quarter was positive.
Okay, so I guess my cautionary tale is I understand the parameters of this structure of this contract, and I understand the sort of leveling of the field and the righting of some issues from the past. I too agree that the automatic aid needs to be addressed, and the clarity on the drug and alcohol policy needs to be further refined, in my opinion. I understand that can happen during the normal opening of a contract. And I think, as you say, as we get more clarity, I think the reality is, unless the feds come through with some bailout package for local governments, and I don't have faith that they will, the realities is we can do whatever we want to today, but we're going to be smacked right in the face with making some seriously difficult decisions in very short order. So I am supportive of this contract for a variety of reasons as it sits before us today, but with a clear understanding, as I have stated for months, that we're going to be making some tough decisions and soon with all groups. So I just wanted some clarity. I assume we'll be getting some better numbers as the year closes out, and in the new year, barring some miracle from the feds, we're gonna be making some tough decisions. And as the mayor said, do you want more pay or do you want more people? And and it appears as, the more pay is the choice being made here today. So, but we're going to have some tough decisions. So anyway, thank you.
All right, Councilwoman Breckus. Oh, there you are. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I think that there is room for regional efficiencies in fire delivery, particularly in the changing conditions of just fire, experience that has become so much more prevalent in the 8 years that I've served. But I don't think it's wise to fold in operational issues into any bargaining contract. It puts the city in a weaker position to the degree that you delegate into a contract, Madam Mayor, what should be managerial provisions of policy. I want to kind of just let you know how I see that. But I do think it's something that should be on the table as a strategy. I do think it's unfortunate that this group came forward out of sync with demands that led to this one not getting settled as quickly as the other ones, and that's unfortunate. And I think it really is a reason for the lateness that this contract has now weathered an economic cycle, and so it looks out of sync with the economic times. But I will echo what was said before: is the council has, and I'm glad that we did that, put that opener in on economic circumstances. And no one living has seen two volatile economic conditions like what we've seen in the last 15 years. So word to everyone, we're living in a capitalist situation where you have tremendous volatility. But I think the council also needs to look in the mirror on this one too, because when you're a city council management side that's had your chief executive rotate be a revolving door, that's 3 managers in about 4 years with 2, long-term, relatively long-term interims, you're going to lose at the bargaining table. You're not going to be at the advantage that others will be at. And so I think there's some ownership there that we need to examine. I hope the drug and alcohol policy will be coming forward soon. That was a priority for me. But I can't support it going right now, and know that we're going to be back on that treadmill very soon with all of our bargaining groups. I think we even have an attorney-client on that today on bargaining strategies. So good job to our team. I know it wasn't easy. And good job to the other side too. I know it wasn't easy for them as well. Thank you.
Okay. All right, thanks. All right, with that being said, I'm going to send it to Councilwoman Dewar. Give me a motion.
Sure. I guess I would like to make a motion that we accept the contract that we've been offered here today.
Okay, I have a motion from Councilwoman Dewar. Do I have a second? A second from Councilman Reece, I think. I think you're on mute. I have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? I'm going to oppose. I feel very strongly about automatic aid, and I don't know how we get that done unless we're not, pushing harder. And again, I know this is very personal with our firefighters, and I'm grateful for all that you guys do, and you know how supportive I am. But that one is, has been a very, very hard one for me on so many levels and personal levels, and you all know that. So disappointed, but I appreciate all that you do. Thanks.
Well, and Madam Mayor, to that point, I think we need to
Motion
bring
and a
back.
second. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, and motion carries. Madam Clerk, maybe you do a roll call vote,
Yes.
because I see 4 hands.
All right. Madam Mayor, we will do a roll call vote for item C1 as requested by you. Breckus?
Aye.
Dewar?
Aye.
Delgado? Weber?
Aye.
Garden?
Aye.
Reese? Phoebe?
No.
All right, Madam Mayor, the motion
right.
passes 6-1.
Thanks. Okay, moving on. Back at
And Madam Mayor, before we move on, I just think it's important. The issues you have daylighted are continue to be incredibly important. The drug and alcohol policy, the automatic aid, et cetera. We've got to put these issues to bed, and I think we've shown tremendous good faith here. And I think the ball's in both our firefighters' court as well as our chief's court to bring these issues across the finish line.
Well, I guess my frustration, to be honest with everyone, my frustration comes from years of trying to get automatic aid and getting those things done, and we have been unsuccessful. And so I think, here we are, years later, and we're asking for something that, quite honestly, could, help our community and provide better fire service, you guys. I'm sorry, but that's really important. And, I don't know. For me, like I said, I have not only the community's best interest, but it's personal because I know firsthand, how devastating it is to lose someone in a fire. So anyway, that's how I feel. And
well, I think your message is being heard loud and clear, and especially given that we're starting this again in February, and that gives them 3 months to come to the table and help make this happen. And they know that we're going to be looking at them, looking for them to be part of the solution.
Yeah, I certainly hope so. And again, it's not that I don't love my firefighters. I absolutely do, but I don't know how much it's going to take because it seems like we can't get there. Really unfortunate. So, all right. Thanks, everyone. Madam Clerk, back at you.
Madam Mayor,
Yeah.
before we move on, could I take just a brief moment to thank both our staff and the council and the representatives from Local 731. These are always iterative and difficult, and I appreciate the professionalism and patience on both sides of the equation here. So I'm glad that we were able to resolve this today. We'll look forward to starting over here in February, and we'll work on what automatic aid could look like for us, so that we're all successful as a team.
Okay, thank you so much. Appreciate that. Okay, Madam Clerk.
Madam Mayor, it should be noted, as we did with the agenda approval, that item C2 has been withdrawn from your agenda. I'd also like to note, as we stated, that item related to item LD1 on redevelopment, as that is the only item on your redevelopment agency. We will not be opening the redevelopment agency meeting today. So with that, Madam Mayor, we are moving on to item D1. This is an overview from your Public Works Director on a potential code change. John Flansburgh can give you a brief presentation.
Good morning, Mayor and City Council. This item came to us through an audit process that we performed on the UNR campus. UNR obviously has a lot of aged infrastructure. They have a lot of their buildings that are, as far as the water system goes, that the sewer uses go off of metered use. And so when we were doing our audit of their facility and also just making sure that new buildings coming on board had paid their sewer connection fees and were paying the appropriate user fees. And the reason we do that is because all of the buildings that are built at UNR are under State Public Works Board, and so they don't go through a review process with City of Reno in terms of the buildings. They don't have to come through us for permitting, but they do need to come through us for the sewer service. So in our review, we just found there was an inconsistency that we had past practice for years and years and years had been to bill the dormitories by water usage and not by residential. And yet in our code, there was a term for dormitories that existed under rooming house. And so as in discussions with UNR and their staff and leadership, we wanted to make a clarity here. And so we're just asking council to consider, so this is a discussion portion today, consider removing dormitory from the rooming house definition, but placing the Nevada System of Higher Education dormitories under commercial, so that they would be billed correctly, not only currently, and remove that discrepancy, but also in the future. And we believe that this is the most equitable way to charge for the dormitories, specifically because they have mandatory evacuation during winter break, and in the summers, they're highly variable. So it seems to be a more equitable way to charge for their service. And that is the discussion before you today. if approved by council, we would be happy to bring back an ordinance change in the future.
Thank you. I believe the mayor is still there.
She is.
Madam
She's just
Mayor?
on mute right now. Vice Mayor Weber, I can see that Councilmember Breckus does have her hand up. If you would like to give her her 3 minutes to ask her questions, Mr. Flansburgh, we can transfer there now.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Flansburgh. Council Member Breckus.
Yeah, I mean, I have for many years now been discussing that we have a more formal mechanism of arrangements that come up with the university, and Mr. Flansburgh's presentation just reminded me of one. We seem to always be doing things with them, but not really looking at it from a broader global perspective. Last year, when I went to San Antonio for the League of Cities, I participated in the Town and Gown Division annual meeting, and I hope to join that group. I've worked in 3 cities with university presence, and there are relationships that are pretty meaningful. And I think I've even sent to the council some examples of memorandums of understandings between host cities and universities, both public and private. And here we are changing an ordinance that maybe on the margins is to their advantage. But Mr. Flansburgh raised a tremendous provision that is to our disadvantage. And it's one that I think is going to be a sticking point for me, especially because we almost lost a fire crew responding to a university emergency. And if a fire a captain or driver, operator had not parked where he did and the crew was on the other side putting on their turnouts, we would have lost a fire crew there. And that, to me, set a new tone for what we need to reset our relationship with UNR, and they need to permit through us. They need to willingly come to the table and permit through us. And I think right now we have something that they want, and we need to get them to come and permit through us. I know that they go through plan check with us, and that they, we walk through and see where their fire, turn-ons are. But we need the university to step forward and permit all their buildings through us and take our red lines just like they would anyone else, because we're the ones who are up there. And I am not willing to support this unless the council takes a step back and says, you know what, we're going to look to recalibrate this relationship, even if it's just in this one setup. And so that's number one. Number two, and I did ask for some follow-up during my briefing, is how is this going to apply to private dormitories? Because I know the university had an effort a while ago where they tried to acquire a private dormitory that had been built on their campus. So I'm wondering how that's going to work out. And I didn't know that they had mandatory evacuation during certain periods.
Yeah, so good question, Councilmember Breckus. I would just say that they do have mandatory, all students need to be removed from the dormitories during winter break, as well as in the summer. They have several that are vacant during those periods of time. The purpose for bringing this forward into your question in regards to private dormitories, they do not have the same requirements. So we would expect that we would build them the same as we do today in terms of their room usage, like an apartment or a shared kitchen arrangement, those types of issues. That's what we're seeing mostly coming in from the private side. They do not have those same forced, forced vacancies.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not so sure about forced vacancies because I know athletes summer over, they have cheer camp or things like that. But if it's on water use, it's on water use. I just suggest to the council that we're going to a step to accommodate the university on the billing. And it's long overdue that they accommodate us on this very reasonable life safety measure of permitting through us in our building department, because we've got people our lives have been on the line. And so I want an agreement with them that captures that before I'm willing to go forward and make this accommodation to them in our sewer rate structure.
Thank you, Councilmember. Councilmember Jor.
Oh, hi. Thank you. I just wanted to comment. I wanted to follow up, Councilwoman Breckus. I don't know if I captured all of her thing, but I will just share from my part. I have felt for a long time, particularly at least on a building permit issue, that they should be following city codes and that they should be a player. It's the Argenta fire, but it's also many other issues. I mean, I'll just go right back to the ADA. I had reason to look it up this weekend, and as I recall what I read, there was a $2 million that they had to pay to redo Mackey Stadium for the ADA. There was a $4 million that they had to pay on, oh gosh, the name of the project's escaping me, but it was very recent too. Same issue on ADA. And I can get that for you in just 1 minute. I looked it up over the weekend. And my point is not to say they're bad. It's to say that all professions make mistakes, whether it's architects, engineers, hydrologists, lawyers. We all, you know, we bring the best people to the table, but sometimes mistakes are made. It helps to have a second set of eyes. It just helps to have a second set of eyes on some of these things. So I don't know if this is a NRS thing that exempts them from building permit. I really don't understand it, but I think it would be to their benefit to help, you know, have that extra set of eyes and not maybe have to pay these overages to companies to go fix problems that the first one should have fixed, and then they end up suing their contractor. I mean, it's not good for anyone. And so I don't think it would cost a lot to have this extra set of eyes. Whether this is the right place to do it, I don't know, and I don't understand, but it's something I feel strongly that I think would be to the betterment. I serve on at least one advisory board to the university, and I'm very engaged there. I love them, but I also think we can all, you know, benefit from a little extra review. So those are just some thoughts. Again, I don't know if this is exactly the right place to do it, and I do support Mr. Flansburgh, the direction that he is going. So thank you.
Thank you. Councilmember Reece.
Hi, thank you, Madam Vice Mayor. Thank you for the opportunity. I've had some significant technological difficulties this morning, so I'm appearing from my phone. I just want to say I appreciate Mr. Flansburgh's work on this particular ordinance change and am supportive of it. I think this is not necessarily the time to dig into the university relationship issues. There are those. I think we have a new president at the university, and I'm looking forward to building that relationship. But at the end of the day, this particular ordinance is rather, I think, minor, and certainly is important that we be able to allow dormitories to be built at commercial consumption rates. And so as to the specific issue about this ordinance, I am supportive, and I hope that my colleagues will do the same.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Madam Vice Mayor.
Yes, I'm sorry, I can't see it on my screen. Yes, Councilmember Jordan.
It's okay. It's okay. I too am having some technology issues, and the power went out up here in the Northwest, so we're having all sorts of fun things happening.
Okay. Can I just say thank you, Councilmember Jordan, for flagging that? I didn't know what happened. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, there's all sorts of fun things happening. So just for everybody, I too am in support of this sort of minor change at this time, and wanted to kind of give the body a quick update on a lengthy and productive and candid conversation that I had with President Sandoval just last week, expressing to him our body's recommitment to our partnership and our sort of mutual desires for economic vitality and town and gown, but also being very frank about our frustrations with that relationship and with some of the communication issues and some of the, for lack of a better term, the feeling of being, I don't know, brushed off in some instances. He was very, very receptive. He not only committed to having quarterly meetings as the council representative for that area, but he is planning to come before the council If not by the end of this year, definitely by the beginning of next, to begin anew, I guess, for lack of a better term. He too wants to improve relationships, to see where we can collaborate more and see where, we can both benefit. So I just wanted to give some context to some wheels that are already in motion and to what appeared to be very much someone in favor of starting anew.
Thank you, Councilmember Jordan. Appreciate it. Anyone else that I'm
I just
missing?
want to say that's awesome.
It is.
Thank you,
It really
Councilman
is.
Jordan. Thank you.
Thank you. No doubt.
Madam Vice Mayor, I'll move to approve staff recommendations.
Just a moment, please. Thank you for the motion. Is there a second? And then we need to go to public comment if there was any.
I'll make a
Second, Jordan.
Okay,
Madam Vice Mayor,
thank
thank you for
you.
checking
Madam
in.
Clerk, do we have any public comment?
There is none on this item.
Thank you. Okay, there, go ahead.
Also, this time, I've raised my issues that have been long-standing, and absolutely nothing's been done on them. And I think the city continues to do up there, including a lot of CIP work to help them facilitate their growth and development. You know, that the trade-off is that that investment didn't occur in Ward 1. It occurred up there. But we need to normalize this relationship. This is not a normal relationship of town and gown. It is very deficient, and I think it is playing out in the lack of progress in a lot of ways in our city, including and in particular downtown revitalization and placemaking. And I hear people are having conversations with the university president. I know he's new on the job. So with that, I'll give it a go. I'll re-echo and redistribute the sample MOUs that I've collected over the years so people can see what, a normal relationship framework is between a city and a host city and a university, and start to maybe be some food for thought. Because it's not a collaboration that's delivering at this point in time. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Breckus. Okay, we have a motion by Councilmember Reece and seconded by Councilmember Dewar. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye. All those opposed? Okay, the motion carries.
Madam Clerk, for the record, I'm an aye.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, noted as a unanimous vote on this. With that, transitioning to our next item, as was noted with your agenda approval, item D2 has been continued to a future meeting. Next item is D3. This is...
Okay, I'm going to resume, Vice Mayor Weber.
Thank you. Thank you. Go ahead.
At this time, we will move over Callie Wilsey and Dylan Shaver from the City Manager's Office to give you a brief presentation and overview on this item. Should be noted for the record, we have no public comment on this item.
Thank you. Go ahead, Mr. Shaver. Ms. Wellesley.
Thank you so much. This is Ms. Wilsey's item. I am here to provide backup, but she is of such a talent that I am unlikely to be required. So, Callie, please take it away.
Good morning. I have a very short presentation, so I'm going to share my screen. Everybody able to see that?
Yes.
Wonderful. Good morning, Mayor, Vice Mayor, members of the council. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. I prepared a very short presentation for this item just to provide some background on why this is in front of you and ultimately what the resolution asks for. So as background, when council was going through their bill draft request process, selection process for the 2021 legislative session, one of the BDRs council approved was to seek authority for the city council to enact the supplemental governmental services tax to put towards that for human services needs if that tax was not already in use in the county. As a part of that motion, council requested to consider a resolution that would request the Washoe County Board of County Commissioners to enact the tax under existing authority in NRS. The timing of this conversation was a little bit weird during the BDR process. Council had, at that last moment when we were making the motion for this, had expressed a desire to want to talk about this issue with the Washoe County Commission in advance, but the timing didn't really allow that. The decision about BDRs had to be made on August 26th, and it was only 5 days later when the BDRs were due. So the direction from council was to go ahead and submit it, but to bring forward this resolution and to continue this conversation locally. To provide just some background on what is currently allowed under state law, NRS 371 provides authority for counties with populations between 100,000 and 700,000, so that would be our county, gives the authority to the county commissioners to impose this tax, which would be not more than 1 cent on each $1 evaluation per vehicle. NRS also outlines how the tax proceeds can be used. And it says the county shall use the proceeds really for construction and maintenance of sidewalks, streets, highways, etc., related to vehicle travel. But there is an additional line in there that the county may expend these proceeds for other operating costs and administrative costs of the county. The resolution in front of you today outlines the situation we just talked about, but has 3 key points. It requests the Washoe County Board of County Commissioners to enact the supplemental governmental services tax for the purpose of supporting human services needs. It explains, and this was part of council conversation during the motion, explains that the city may stop pursuit of our BDR if the tax is enacted prior to the bill potentially being signed into law. And third, directs City Manager Thornley to work with Washoe County to schedule a meeting on this topic and related issues so this body can discuss with Washoe County Commission. Upcoming dates, just to give you kind of what's coming next, is between now and next Wednesday, we're expected to receive the draft bill language from the Legislative Council Bureau. By next Wednesday, November 18th, the bill must be pre-filed for it to move forward, and then the session begins on February 1st. Again, just kind of a very quick overview of what's in front of you. Again, this item came forward because it was requested by council as part of the bill draft request item. But with that, I will turn it back for questions and discussion. Vice Mayor.
Thank you so much. Good presentation. Councilwoman Dewar.
Thank you. Kelly, could you put up I think it was your 3rd slide where you said what the GST can be used for? And the other question I had is, do we have a sense of what the 1 cent would generate?
Sorry, I'm trying to move my screen.
Sure.
To your question, we are still doing kind of analysis on what that government services tax would look like. It also kind of relates to the other our other bill draft request, because that is one of the other options to fund parks as part of the ballot initiative, which was our other BDR. So there is some additional analysis we don't have complete as of today. I don't know why it's not.
But I'll let you get there. There you go.
Okay.
You went by this very quickly, and could you just hit those 3 bullets on the right again really quickly? Major use of tax proceeds.
You bet. So NRS says the county shall use the proceeds to pay for cost or projects related to construction, maintenance of sidewalks, streets, avenues, boulevards, highways, and other public rights-of-ways used primarily for vehicular traffic. The 3rd bullet on this list it relates to that. There's some very specific kind of distancing information. It can also be used with interlocals with Regional Transportation Commission. But those first 2 bullets talk about really kind of the use of the proceed to be for that. But there
So
is
bullet 2 is any other cost to carry out governmental functions, and that's where our hook is into the unsheltered population.
bullet number 2 does have some language that says the county may expend the proceeds of this tax to pay the operating costs of the county and any other costs to carry out the governmental functions of the county.
Okay, and again, this is, so right now, the government services tax is levied on vehicle registration. They have enacted 4 cents of it. Many, many proposals have come up to use the other 1 cent since I've, been around the last 15 years. Some of them, well, all of them some of them have been considered by the county formally, and all of them have been turned down. So the bill, I just want to make sure I understand the linkage. So we say it can be used for this per NRS, and then you don't have any sense even of what the other 4 cents is generating, and we could divide by 4 just to get a rough estimate.
I'm sorry, no, I could probably pull that up. I just don't have it off the top of my head.
Well, okay, it would be great. I mean, are we talking about 10 million or 5 million or 1 million? If you could do that, I think it'd really be I suspect we're going to support this, but I just want to know what we're talking about.
Sure. And again, I think the important thing about this today is, if the council decides to move forward with this kind of triggers it to that next step to council's original intent to continue this conversation with the county, because that original timeline just wasn't feasible prior to selecting. So if that were to happen, we could lay that out, more specifically.
Okay. So Dylan, do you know financially, or does, our finance department know?
I'm pulling up the county's budget right now to figure out what they bring in from GST. I apologize, we don't have that immediately available.
Well, it's sometimes good just to know what you're having a spirited debate about. So I'll cede the floor. Thank you.
Madam Vice Mayor.
Yes, thank you. Go ahead, Councilmember Jordan.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Kelly, for this, and I appreciate all the work that's put into this. I'm going to come at this from maybe just a different angle. I don't think anybody disputes that the need for additional affordable housing is great and significant and is causing all sorts of issues, and we're all desperately trying to find every avenue we can to increase those affordable units. I come from it as if I'm in a governing body of any kind, your Reno, your Sparks, your Washoe County, and another governing body does a resolution and tells me what to do, I don't know how receptive I am to that. And I'll just give an example. So let's say Washoe County did a resolution that told Reno they needed to, they needed to stop doing something, or they needed to do something, and it was them telling us what to do. I don't know how well we would receive that, and I just put myself in their seat. They understand the complexities, the need, the urgency, all of those things. I just don't know how they're going to receive us kind of as a group telling them what to do with something that's within their body's jurisdiction and vote to enact. I don't know. I don't know that this is going to accomplish what maybe we're hoping it's going to accomplish. I actually think it may have an opposite effect. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. Hold on just a second. Thank you, Councilwoman Jordan.
You put the screen up so that
that's what I was going to ask. And thank you, Mayor. Could we allow Councilwoman Reece to speak? She's had her hand raised.
Yeah, thank you. In my view, when we had the discussion before, this was a mechanism to address the homeless issue. And I mean, is there unanimity among this body that we are not getting the job done with the homeless situation, that it is in a crisis situation? I know it is in Ward 1. I know Ward 1 residents feel that their quality of life, their compassion to those is great also with the homelessness. And if we don't think that addressing the issues of the unsheltered is a crisis and one that is lacking in resources, then we can move on. But I believe it is both. And then I think you really need to have a foundational understanding of how homelessness has been addressed in this region. And my experiences with it go back 20 years. When I first started as a staff planner in 1998 at the city of Reno, Reno was very much dancing around moving into the sheltering space because the county would not. And that was seen at that time as a drag on downtown revitalization. And the homeless populations in 20 years, 22 years have just exceeded so much. And it's so much more of an issue. It's really much more of an issue than it was in 2014. So Bob Cashel came along, and city budgets were more flush back then than they are now, and he had the shelter built. And that's what we've continued to own and operate. And there was hesitation at City Hall because it was always seen that under the framework of state government laws and funding, that services to the indigent population, which is the homeless people, they are deemed to be indigent, was a county responsibility. And I'll remind you all that Ms. Newby, our former county manager, came up from Clark County. She was amazed that Reno was in the homeless sheltering business. I mean, because it really is not that way in other parts of in the other metro states. So during the downturn of and I'm going to ask for more than 3 minutes because I really do want to recite my understanding, long history of this. During the downturn, when the city lost a third of its workforce through budgetary cuts, the general fund was very stretched. Reno could not continue to put general fund into the sheltering. And Washoe County stepped up and has been funding current shelter operations with those indigent funds, where Reno is only in our federal CDBG dollars, more or less. We have some other funds that we use for bridge housing and so on.
All right, Councilwoman Reece, we're going to move on to the next member. We'll come back to you. We'll come back to you in the next round.
I'm going to ask what point of privilege just to continue for a few more minutes, if I could.
I'm not going to accept that right now. There's others that are wanting to talk as well. Thank you. Thank you. Madam Mayor.
Yes, thank you so much. Let me ask you, Dylan and Kelly, have you guys had conversations with the county on this? And the reason I asked is Commissioner Lucy brought it up. He was very concerned that we might be overreaching, and I think to Councilwoman Jardin's point, and I clearly want to work with our jurisdictions to the best ability that we possibly can, and make sure that, we don't step out there in front of them, without, having these conversations to make sure that what we're doing is productive. Because I do think Councilwoman Jardin brings up some good points. But you also know that I feel very strongly about mental health services. And I just believe that we have got to be stepping up to the table on some of these services. I know, like Councilwoman Jardin does as well on homelessness. She's been the champion there for us. So I think that we're both fully in support of figuring out how to fund our biggest needs. But I also want to be very in conjunction with the county on how we're proceeding.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I believe that Councilwoman Jardin had one more comment, and then we'll go back to Councilwoman Reece. We'll get Mr. Reece in there too.
Thank you, Vice Mayor Weber, and I appreciate that. And I do think it's important. While I don't need a lesson on the history of homelessness in the city of Reno. I've been doing the work with regards to it for 8 years. There has been a tremendous amount of progress made on these issues that are very complex and take a lot of efforts and a lot of resources to move the needle. And we have come a long way with regional support of these issues. And there are some very big things that are about to happen that will, whether it's the Built for Zero or some of the sheltering things that are coming to fruition, those are significant and they're game changers. And that was done by regional work. And I just bristle at somebody telling us as a body what to do without it kind of being a regional approach. We've often said, homelessness isn't a Reno issue. It's a regional issue, and we need to approach it as such. And I don't think we should come off of that. And I'm afraid of the efforts that we've made to this point could be damaged by lobbying a resolution like this at a county that is fully aware of the issues before us and have been in large part working with us to help solve these. So I'm not in favor of this resolution as put forth. Obviously, I'm in support of affordable housing, bridge housing. Have worked tirelessly for 8 years on things to help these. I just don't think this is the right manner and mechanism by which to get where we want to go as a region.
Thank you. And I'll come right to you, Councilwoman Dewar, but I'm going to go to Councilman Reece first.
Thank you, Madam Vice Mayor. What I want to just say is that as I read the resolution, I don't think we're trying to step on anyone's toes. I mean, the truth is that we have an issue that we flagged as one that is concerning to our residents. That issue is a lack of financial support for unsheltered folks. We, in August, directed our staff, Ms. Wilsey and Mr. Shaver, to go forward with one of our bill draft requests being transferring the GST from the county to us. I think we're just trying to make sure that we've buttoned that process up. That's not the other part about the resolution, which I think is encouraging, is the need for a joint meeting. I think obviously our joint meeting with the city of Sparks and Washoe County is super important for us to address this issue. And so I am broadly in support of this and don't believe that anyone will have such thin skin on the other side of the bodies that we work with. We know them all, we work well with them all, and this is not a pointed attack on them. It's simply our desire to see these funds be appropriately spent. And so we've got to get closer together in how we approach that and regionally. And I haven't had conversations. None of the council or county commissioners have reached out to me to say that, hey, Councilmember Reece, this is something that is disturbing to me. Certainly, all of them know that I'm accessible to that, and we're all busy with a lot of things. So I'm broadly in support of it and think that Councilmember Breckus has raised some very valid points.
Thank you, Councilmember Reece. Councilwoman Dewar, and then
thank you.
I just want to check in. Councilman Delgado, do you want to speak as well? I didn't see you raise
Thank you. Not at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you.
Vice Mayor.
Councilwoman Dewar.
I guess it's funny. I agree with everyone. I think we have stumbled a bit in the delivery of this. I don't think it's anyone's preferred approach to address an issue like this. I think everyone would have rather done it in a collaborative basis, and that we probably should have thought of it 6 months before the session came to this. I think we just suddenly found ourselves at a deadline and sort of did this to preserve a space in line. But I don't think it's our preferred way to go about doing business, is to just sort of launch with a document saying we're going to the legislature to do something. And I agree with you, Councilwoman Jordan. Every time that's happened, and I'll just remind people that happened when the county launched an initiative to do away with regional planning and never discussed it with us, just launched a bill. And it caused a lot of hard feelings amongst us when they, and it was out of the blue. I mean, there had been no pre-discussion of it. So I totally get how people feel. And I think if our representatives could convey, I would almost say our sorrow or apologies for approaching it this way, that we just kind of got caught in a deadline, that our real goal is to work this through with the county. Dylan's raising his hand, so maybe I'm saying something wrong, but I mean, that's just my sense, is that we want it spent. We've wanted it spent on a lot of things for the whole darn time I've been here, 6 years. Before I got here, previous 6 years, there have been many opportunities to exercise this 1 cent GST. So it wasn't my idea to move forward with this way. Actually, Councilwoman Jordan, I thought you and Councilwoman Breckus were both sponsoring this when it came in front of us last time. You were both speaking ardently about it. I went along with the approach, but here we are. We submitted the bill, but we are going to have the meeting, right? I mean, it's coming right up, and I think everything we can do to make that meeting successful is really what our charge to our manager needs to be, is to convey our willingness to talk, fix it, work it out. But I mean, I will also say at the end of the day, it's hard to squeeze whatever out of a whatever. It's hard to make money appear, and this is just one opportunity. So while I might like it as an option for the ballot initiative, I think it really belongs in this space that is a county function, city function working together. So thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Dewar. And Councilwoman Breckus, I have you here, but I'm going to go to Dylan Shaver, who has Mr. Shaver. Go ahead.
Certainly. Thank you for the opportunity, Madam Vice Mayor, members of the council. Again, Dylan Shaver, Chief of Staff to the City Manager, for the record. Appreciate the conversation so far. The way the county collects these funds, it goes into them as part of their consolidated tax collection. So there's no specific line item in their budget, which makes our estimation. However, we have been able to find some figures. It looks like one penny would raise about $4 million. But again, please don't hold me to that, because it's not reported to them or anybody in the manner that you're sort of requesting.
I was just looking for an order of magnitude, so that really helps.
Sure. And then as for the manner and the way this is conveyed, the mayor and others have asked, has staff been communicating with the county on this item? And Ms. Wilsey and myself both certainly have. The resolution before you right now is here at the council's request. And so at that point, that's really a communication directly from you to them, and the conversations that folks on this panel have been having are way above my pay grade.
Thank you so much. Madam Mayor, did you have something that you wanted to talk about before?
I just think Councilwoman Dewar brings up such a really, really good point. When she talked about when they wanted to get rid of regional plan, you really did, I think, kind of hit it home with, some of the complexities that issue caused. And again, I think that's really important. I can certainly be supportive. I just want to make sure we are working in conjunction with our jurisdictions. And I can't remember, maybe looking at our city manager, Doug Thornley, if we had put that on a mayor's managers meeting with them. I can't remember because we've had so much going on. And if we haven't, then I would also suggest in the next meeting with them that maybe that's something that we do have a conversation, so our body feels that we're all working in conjunction together and cohesively, so that we all can lift each other up and accomplish what we really want to do. What do you think, City Manager Thornley?
This is Doug Thornley, City Manager, for the record. Madam Mayor, as you know, the agenda for the 18th has sort of
Doug, can you pull your mic closer a little?
It has sort of grown and should be a fairly comprehensive and in-depth meeting as to our approach regionally to the unsheltered and indigent populations. That said, sort of the nuts and bolts that we're getting into now as to who pays for what and how we approach that. There is an interlocal agreement and there is a cost share agreement on that agenda. But for a lot of reasons, there's sort of a broader conversation that needs to take place. And I was in contact with the county manager, Mr. Brown, this morning, and that is certainly on everybody's radar screen. And I believe that at least for right this moment, we are on the same page as to working cooperatively and how we're going to thread this needle.
Yeah, and I think to your point, I am very concerned about that meeting because I think that meeting is going to be pretty extensive. And that's probably not the meeting to have this conversation in, correct?
Once again, Doug Thornley, for the record, I agree that that meeting is not the meeting where we have the full conversation here about how we're going to approach it. But it certainly frames the issue and brings it into sharper relief than it exists today.
Okay, so we could put that on a mayor's managers and then bring it to the council and do it in conjunction with the county in a certain capacity.
We can, should, and will.
Okay, thank you so much. Go ahead.
Well,
Madam-
I mean, Madam Chair, are you back? Are you taking over?
If I may,
No,
just a response. Oh, I'm sorry.
However, I didn't see you on there because I can't use my screen right now. So I'm sending it back to you, Councilwoman, or Vice Mayor Weber. Go ahead.
Thank you so much. And I just want to weigh in before we go back another round because Councilwoman Breckus has been waiting patiently. But the point is that I do not support us asking the county or demanding, I guess it sounds like more that we're doing. We do need to do it congenially, and we need to work together on this. But it's not we can say that we would like you to do that, but I don't know. It just doesn't feel like that this is the way that the county is even going to listen to us. And I am hoping that they will. But let's think about how we do this, because we have a lot of relationships that we could lose if we move forward and say, you know, we want you to look at this Government Services Act. This is not the way to go, in my opinion. So I am not going to be supportive of that. So I'm going over here to Councilwoman Breckus. Thank you for your patience.
Yeah, thank you. So I think we need to go forward. I really do. I think resolutions are very nice, direct ways to communicate something to another body. Sometimes we go into these joint meetings and it's all over the place. And if we go into this joint meeting with this resolution saying there's revenue on the table regionally that we don't have, and we'd like you to exercise it, and then, you know, as backstop if they don't, just like Bob Cashel did 20 years ago in building the shelter, we want to exercise it because we see a tremendous problem in our streets. And I just want to talk to the council a little bit about budget. The area of the council budget, to my analysis, that has grown the most in the last 2 years has been related to homeless services, mostly on the sweep side of the encampments with the clean and safe team. And that's a big go. It's a big go, particularly if we're moving into tight contracting revenues for ourselves. Likewise, I don't know how we're going to pay for the super shelter. I didn't support it. I wanted to go in a different approach of, you know, housing first, street team social workers, but the council's moving forward with it. And one of the CHAB meetings that I saw hesitation from the Sparks city manager because he had a number of annual operations on those. And I don't know what if that cost share agreement is going to have to continue to now to the super shelter, where are we going to get the go-to on those funds? Because we're maxed out on our CDBG, so it's going to go more into the general fund. So our general fund with the super shelter and the clean and safe is really taking a hit. And if we don't get some relief, goodbye firefighters, goodbye park maintenance workers, goodbye police officers to a growing city. That's what I see. And maybe if the body doesn't want to do this resolution, which I don't think should be threatening in any way to the council, maybe you ask or direct the manager to come in with some budgetary numbers to start to lay the groundwork for us of how much we're getting taxed on the general fund on meeting this need, because we really are getting hammered, to my way of thinking. I also want to say, because I saw late before we started this meeting that the AGC, the contractors, wrote an opposition to this move and saying it should be reserved for infrastructure. I think that's an accurate point and perspective, but I also want to say that this tax has been on the books a lot longer than the gas tax. That at this point, we all need to remember the gas tax here in Washoe County generates, and I might be a little tardy on this, on my not quite up to date, about 40 cents on the gallon is what Washoe County consumers pay for gas tax for transportation. And that has no cap in sight. In Washoe County, in Clark County, for comparisons, that gas tax was capped out at 16 cents over 10 years. So Washoe County generated taxes for infrastructure are mega compared to what the other metro has. And, you know, you have to balance needs. And I think the balance, I wish we had more, I wish we had it all, but I think the balance of needs from what I hear from Ward 1 residents is dealing with the homeless, unsheltered crises. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilwoman Breckus. Let me remind everyone that the gas tax that you talked about, Ms. Breckus, was also voted on by the people. So there we go. There was another hand raised. Anyone else?
It was me.
Oh, Councilwoman Dewar. Thank you.
Two things. One is that I'm a little fretful about the meeting coming up without some more talk about this, because we said there's a lot on the meeting. I have no idea what's on the meeting. I haven't seen an agenda to my knowledge. So I feel like this is going to be like hanging over us as we go into the meeting. And you might say it's not officially on the agenda, but it colors our conversation. And that's where I'm a little bit confused. So what is on the meeting if it's not this? I thought this was part of it. And the other thing is, what do we think the resolution exactly will accomplish? A resolution is simply a statement of intent, right? Or it could lay out a path. But what do you guys think, and I guess I'm asking our manager, what do you think are the key elements? Is it just it looks like it's recounting what we did. Like it's recounting that it's recounting the issue, how important the issue is. It's talking about that there's this authority to enact. It's saying that we voted to utilize one of our bills. This is all history. And as part of the BDR motion, we said that we would do a resolution asking them to enact the governmental services tax. Maybe this moment isn't the moment that we have to sign the resolution. Maybe we go into the workshop, we have the conversation, we work out a path, and if we're not getting there, we do the resolution at the meeting right after that workshop. I mean, this isn't like law. This is just a resolution of intent. And we're kind of letting them know, and I guess in some ways it's sort of very informative to them about our planned next steps. But I think they already know that, especially if you've talked to them. So I'm not sure that I'm glad we're having the conversation, to be honest with you, in advance of the workshop, but I'm not sure that this is the be all end all thing. And I don't think we have to get all wrapped around the axle about voting for this resolution here today. That's just how I feel. So
thank you, Councilwoman Dewar. That's great information. Councilwoman Jardin, I think you had something to say.
Thank you very much. And Councilwoman Dewar kind of hit it on the head. Maybe that is the approach. I mean, I can say conversations of late, as recent as the last 60 days with the county on a number of things, and Sparks on a number of things, homeless related, have given me far more hope and encouragement on some fronts than I've probably had in the number of years I've been on CHAB. And maybe the presentations, and I know my understanding is there's going to be a number of them at this regional meeting, which makes it for a long meeting where this may not be the appropriate time to talk about this resolution. Maybe we come out of that meeting with a different sense. Maybe we don't. Maybe we're more encouraged for bringing this forward. I just think we need to sit with them and speak with them rather than speaking at them. And our opinions may change after next Wednesday, either direction. I just think maybe the timing of this and the way it's being delivered, I just bristle a little bit. I would bristle if they did it to us.
And we've already done something. We have a pending BDR. It's not going away. It's getting written up. It's going to be there. I mean, nothing's happening. Nothing's changing our trajectory. It's just we're not writing about it.
Thank you, Councilwoman Dewar. Mr. Thornley, is there anything that you would want to say about that? I like this idea of not moving forward today and maybe looking at doing it at another time after our next meeting.
Well,
move to continue.
Okay. There's a motion by Councilman Reece. Is there a second? Or I really think we need to have a little
second
for discussion. Let's go there.
Right.
Go ahead, Thornley.
Well, I certainly would echo sort of the call to work cooperatively with the other agencies, sort of with the caveat that I believe Councilmember Breckis's observations that we certainly have some regional obligations that are obligations of the county, and they are frankly, threatening our ability to spend the general fund on city services that our constituents, want and deserve. And so, hashing out what the obligations amongst the three entities are is important. And this meeting next week is, I think, I don't want to call it a first step, because obviously this conversation has been going on for a very long time. But I believe it's it is an important step, and my conversations as well have been encouraging as of late in terms of sort of bringing all of these issues to a head and resolving them in a way that works for everyone. So yes, I believe continuing past the meeting on the 18th is probably prudent, but we are far from done with this conversation.
Absolutely. Councilwoman Breckus.
Yeah, I mean, I'll support the motion because it doesn't seem like the appetite is there to pass this resolution this time, and obviously the motion's on the table. But I'm wondering if our manager could let us know the exposure to the general fund on a trend line of 5 years, and really the numbers of operational that are perceived with this super shelter. And federal dollars are what federal dollars are, and I know we got a doubling in the CDBG, but we just passed a kind of spendy labor contract. That's an absorption to the general fund. I mean, I'm terrified about the general fund going forward, having come in November of 2012 when the city finance department had cash flow issues. And we get a big property tax hit, and we're back on to the layoffs. So
the information you've asked for is information we're preparing, and you'll see it in a memorandum prior to the 18th, so that you have that information at your disposal for the conversation with the Board of County Commissioners and the Sparks City Council.
on general fund obligations, or all city cost obligations to the unsheltered, including the campments and the clean and safe? Okay.
Yes.
Thanks.
Thank you so much. I don't believe there's any further discussion, but I want to make sure with Madam Clerk, was there any public comment on this
Madam Vice Mayor, there was
item?
none.
I'm glad. Thank you. And let me see, there was a motion by Member Reece and seconded by Member Dewar. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, the motion carries. Madam Clerk.
Madam Vice Mayor, with that, transitioning to item D4, this is a presentation from Jeremy Smith, Director of Regional Planning, Truckee Meadows Regional Planning Agency, with a brief presentation on the COVID risk meter. Should be noted for the record, as this is his presentation, there's no public comment on this item. We will move over Jeremy Smith now to be able to give you his presentation.
Thank you.
Madam Vice Mayor, before Jeremy begins, I guess we're going to wait for him to jump on.
Yes, please, Madam Mayor.
First of all, I just want to say thank you so much for Jeremy's time. He is such a tremendous asset in our community, like nothing I've ever seen before. So hardworking, so dedicated to helping us fight COVID-19, and also his expertise has just been sheer brilliance, to be honest with you. Many cities are not able to do this because, it takes really some comprehensive data analysis and lots of sort of inner workings. So I just want the council to know how fortunate we are to have Jeremy. And then part of that was the working group that Naomi was heading up, Councilwoman Dewar, who has just done a phenomenal job. And I think her background and expertise on this has been so beneficial. And also she's really good at sort of explaining it as in layman's terms, which is really helpful when you work with physicians and epidemiologists and statisticians, people that are much smarter than I am for sure. And so I just want to say thank you for her incredible work on the working group. And so I just can't begin to thank you enough. And actually, I'd ask you, Naomi, if you have a list of the people that have been on the COVID committee, just recognizing their names, because I don't have it in front of me, and there's quite a few to list, but I'm just beyond grateful for, Dr. Ron Ariel, Dr. Nielsen, Dr. Fry, Dr. Hess, and then we have someone who is also young and brilliant, and that's Jack Hester, and I think he came from Councilwoman Breckis's recommendation, and he's just phenomenal as well. And then we have Julie Lucero, Dr. Lucero, I believe, and she's from the university. And who else do we have? Because we have a great group, but I want to make sure they get recognized because this could never have happened without their dedication and hard work.
Well, just to be clear, and thank you so much for those kind words, Mayor. I mean, this is one of those, it takes a village kind of thing. I mean, first of all, you're absolutely right. We could not have done this without Jeremy. I mean, before I asked him if he was interested in volunteering his time for this effort, I had a few other people in mind that also do data analysis. But before I could even get to them, he said, no, I want to do this. This would be amazing to help our community in this really difficult time of the coronavirus crisis. So first of all, he started as a volunteer. He worked at it as a volunteer for months before the Regional Planning Governing Board decided to make this an official project of the Regional Planning Governing Board. And four of us are on that board. I happen to be chairman right now, but when it started, I was vice chair. And the board has embraced this at this point, and it is posted on the TMRPA website, all the work that is happening. Just to your point, Mayor, there's two groups. So there's a larger group that you put together, which I call the COVID-19 advisors, the mayor's advisors. And we all recommended some people. You went out and found other people. I can get a comprehensive list towards the end of this meeting after Jeremy goes, just to kind of recognize those people because they put in a lot of time. Within that group, 5 of us got together, scientists, and said, we will take a crack at this COVID meter. And that was Jeremy, again, volunteering. That was Jack Hester, who was on break from Brown. He's getting his master's in public health. Some of you may recall John Hester. This is his son. He has a great modeling background, has been extremely helpful on that. We had 2 primary doctors, Dr. Eric Nielsen, who works in the emergency room, and Dr. Ron Ariel, who is a pediatrician, who just as we were starting was retiring from his main practice, but is still continuing on with many other endeavors. And we've recently added a fellow named Aditya, and I don't have his last name at the back end of my tongue, but he is a professor at UNR in aerospace engineering. So what is unique about this in my mind is that you've brought together people. I mean, I'm a geologist, but I'm basically a scientist, a managing scientist for my whole career. But you have people from these different disciplines, like aerospace engineering and Jeremy's work in regional planning and data management, that have come together. And with Aditya, we're being able to not just make a COVID meter, but actually a predictive tool as well. So we don't get to just know the weather today, but it's like the weather forecasters looking out next week and saying, well, it's hot right now, but it's going to cool off next weekend. So with that, I think enough said from me. I would love to hand this over to Jeremy and tell us about this tool.
Thank you, Member Dewar. Welcome, Mr. Smith. Glad to have you here.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. It's Jeremy Smith, for the record, Director of Regional Planning. And thanks for that excellent intro. That covered a lot of stuff I was going to cover, so I can move right into talking about the meter itself. I think hopefully I do have the ability to share the screen, so I'll try that now. Okay, you guys seeing the slide there with the risk meter?
Yeah.
Okay, excellent. So yeah, this is what we've been working on. Sort of volunteer up front, and then officially after September 4th, I think it was, or the 3rd, that the Regional Planning Governing Board weighed in and said, yeah, spend some time on this. It's covidriskmeter.org. That's the URL that'll get you there. And the idea is really to make a simplified messaging platform for the conditions of COVID in the region on any given day, really. And there are a lot of websites out there and a lot of data streams delivering information about COVID. And people learn and take in information differently. For some folks, that might be just great to go to a dashboard or get an email with a daily number or something. For others, that's tough to negotiate. And so this is kind of designed to do this simplified messaging with this kind of familiar speedometer gauge. It's got the 5 colors going from green to purple, escalating in severity. And with each color, there's also associated guidelines that were actually created by the physicians and medical experts on the team that Councilwoman Dewar was describing. And so right now we are in this very high kind of upper tick mark condition of red. And I'm going to explain why the meter got to that position here in a sec. But the associated guidelines, which are recommendations for individual behavior, really it's to say, hey, community, this is what's happening. Here are some guidelines that we think that would be good to adopt because it's going to help us to minimize the spread of this virus. And because of where we're at right now, I mean, we're suggesting through these guidelines that shelter in place as much as possible, really. Socially isolate, keep your activities to the essential activities, and just, you know, kind of in line with what the governor came out with 2 days ago in terms of giving him 2 weeks where everyone just kind of backs off and tries to allow the state and everyone to get a handle on this escalation that we're seeing. So I think, you know, we're definitely in harmony with that messaging, and it is absolutely a result of the data that's tracking these conditions. So let's move on to see what is the data. So underlying this speedometer looking gauge are 5 data indicators that relate directly to conditions surrounding the COVID crisis. So first off, number 1 is COVID risk assessments. That's coming directly from the Washoe County Health District. In order to get a test at the health district, you need to fill out a risk assessment form, either through the phone or online, and then they say, okay, we're going to schedule you. Well, the health district is one of the only places you can go to get a free test where you don't need a prescription. And so in talking with the leadership over there, they thought this would be a really good leading indicator to sort of show, okay, if we're getting an increase in the number of people trying to get a test, that should be a sign that things are increasing. And that's what we honestly have been seeing in the data. And I'll show you that. The next one is test positivity. That's a measure of all the tests that are given, how many are coming back positive. And we get that data directly from the state of State of Nevada, the DHHS, Department of Health and Human Services. The next indicator is new cases daily. So, and that's normalized by our population by 100,000. Basically, you know, how many cases are we seeing each day? We know that in the recent weeks that has been skyrocketing as well, really high. So I can show you that too. Medical interventions is specifically about how many people are going to the hospital because they have a positive COVID test, they have COVID, or they have to go in, or how many people that are in the hospital get moved into the ICU because they have COVID. So that's what that indicator is about. And then to the far right, the indicator number 5 is about overall hospital capacity. So now we're looking at not just the COVID patients in the hospital, but what's our hospital staffing and capacity like? Because, you know, one of the things that came out really early with this disease was we need to flatten the curve, right? We need to make sure that the medical professionals are going to be able to handle a surge if it occurs. And we do seem to be surging right now. And so that hospital capacity issue is actually very important. And so each of these 5 indicators, you know, we look at the data. I receive daily data from all these providers, the health district, the state, the county, and the hospital association, Nevada Hospital Association, put it together and run an algorithm, which basically each indicator can score from 0 to 3. If it's scoring a 0, that means that indicator is very low. It's not an issue. If it's scoring a 3, then things are in crisis in that indicator, with a total of 15 points maximum. I won't spend a lot of time because there's a lot of information on this slide, but if you want to learn more about exactly how those scores get generated, there actually is a methodology document on the website that will talk in detail about all of these different class breaks and how we score things. But all of these breaks, I will say, were not just pulled out of thin air. They either have some sort of resource to a health institute like Harvard's Global Health Institute, or they were informed by the hospital administrators or the doctors and medical professionals on the teams to make sure that, you know, we were hitting the right breaks. And so far, it seems to be doing a pretty good job. This is what you can also find on the website. Just below the gauge, you can click a little link that leads to this graph daily that's updated, and it shows how the model has scored over the past several weeks. And so I've got these color bands to indicate, you know, if the line is in a certain band, that was the daily threat level or risk level at that time. And I think what you can see is that since about the end of September, we're kind of started on a slow upward march, and then we hit November and we shot up to the higher red condition. And so it really has been a recent, you know, past 3-week kind just escalation of these conditions that has led us to this red setting in the meter. And I think you can see here, if you look at the individual scores that this thing is producing, indicator 1 is maxed out. Indicator 2 is maxed out. That's test positivity. Indicator 3, new cases, maxed out. Medical interventions, recently there's been a lot of uptick in folks going to the hospitals. It's almost at the maximum as well. And finally, hospital capacity is starting to, hospital utilization is increasing and that capacity is shrinking. So that's being registered as well. So we're at 13. That means we're half a point away from the severe purple setting, which is someplace that we really, I don't think, want to get to. A couple of graphs quickly. These are available on the website. I will say we are working on enhancements to make these graphs more attractive and usable for folks. We've gotten quite a bit of feedback. And, one of the things is I'm not dedicating full time to this. I still have the regional planning duties. We're doing land use stuff. So, we're making sure that we keep everything going. And we have enlisted some help on the website to make this more attractive. But what this is showing is the black line is risk assessments received by the county. And then that dashed line is the 14-day average. I mean, you can see very clearly that that has been moving up and up and up over the past few weeks, kind of uncharacteristically. It's higher than it has been throughout the entire record back to April 1 that I've been tracking. This next one is showing new cases. I think you can see the black line again. It's almost vertical at the far right there. The number of new cases we're getting daily has been just out of control. For a long time, we were well under 25 per 100,000. But as of late, we're at something like 62 or greater than 60 per 100,000. So it's really orders of magnitude almost above where it was. So that's driving the score up. And then, as I mentioned, this is really kind of what put it up into the 13 level here very recently, has been the medical interventions. And so on the left is the graphs you can get on the website right now. And I think you can just see that in the recent past, those lines are going up. And those are average lines. So that's not really even daily scores. That's a 7-day average. And on average, we're really increasing. But on the right, the blue and orange lines, those are raw data lines from the Nevada Hospital Association from the North region. And the North region includes all of the hospitals here in the Reno-Sparks area, but also Carson-Tahoe. And so that's kind of the hospital ecosystem as it was explained to me and the appropriate geography to use to track this data. Well, the blue line is showing that over the past 2 weeks, so starting somewhere back around here, we were just above 100. Now we're almost approaching 250 people in the hospitals due to COVID. So it's been doubling or more in 2 weeks. It's pretty alarming. The ICU signal is not quite as severe, but you can see it is heading up. And I did run these numbers today just before this call, and it has gone down by a couple people in terms of COVID patients in the ICU as of today. So that's good news. But it's been pretty volatile and pretty much increasing over the past few weeks. So that's kind of how the model works. Recently, we did take a close look at the risk assessment data. We were using a trend because in the beginning, this is brand new stuff. We didn't have any information. It was like, how many risk assessments do you get? We don't know because we haven't gotten very many. So now we have 200 days of data, and we've been able to empirically set some class breaks that we think are working to manage that indicator. And then the fifth one, the hospital capacity indicator, there's changes in how these data are delivered, right? I mean, a lot of this was getting the relationships in place to receive this data daily so we could operate the meter. One of the things is from the Nevada Hospital Association. For a while, they made a decision to change to the licensed bed count in terms of hospital beds and adult ICU beds that are available. And after a little digging and after some concern from some of the members of the greater team, it was pointed out that in fact, the licensed beds are quite a bit higher than what's actually feasible in terms of staffing the beds. And so we've worked with the Nevada Hospital Association to get a retrospective look over the past 3 months to what those average staffing levels are in terms of both total hospital beds and ICU beds. And we've brought that now into the model so we have a better take on real capacity as opposed to licensed capacity as it would be on paper. So those two improvements have really helped. I think make the model more reflective of real conditions that are happening in the community. And finally, we're not stopping. There are some enhancements that are ongoing, some in response to the governor's task force and the recent activity around the cities and county managers talking, with the health district about how we're going to come up with a plan to try to end, this case proliferation and get this thing stabilized. And so hopefully they'll be able to use the risk meter as part of that plan for messaging. And in that, and we want to make sure that we're not sending a sort of a jumbled, bouncy message, right, where our guidelines are shifting frequently. So the idea will be to take the speedometer gauge to sort of a weekly setting, which is going to be based on how the past week's daily scores performed. But we don't want to lose the ability to be transparent with the public. We want to make sure that everyone is this is really for citizens, so they can be aware of what's going on and be empowered by this information, right? We're just trying to be transparent, the deliverers of information. And so we're working on, continuing to show a daily score and also to detail in more, I guess in better terms, each individual model indicator and how it's scoring and what you're seeing there. So we propped it up, we got it together, we got it working, we keep it up every day, but obviously it could use some help. And so we've actually put in a proposal to the city of Reno with Dylan to get some coronavirus relief funds to help with the website and the graphic representation and some of the stats and validation that are going on. And so that's kind of in process. I have it with our lawyers right now. Everything looks good, but you got to check everything before you sign it. So I'm doing that. Finally, as Councilwoman Dewar mentioned, Dr. Ron Ariel, who's a pediatrician, brought in Aditya Nair, who's the aerospace engineering professor at UNR. And with help from Jack and myself and everyone on the team, we've been working on the ability not just to track conditions right now, but to look a week out into the future with some predictive models. And what they've shown so far looks very promising. And so as one of the enhancements that we'll probably see will also be some form of a prediction. And so with that, that's kind of a run through. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about the meter.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Just really happy that you're here. That was a great presentation. So I hope that there's a way that we can all keep talking about this, the meter, and sharing it with our constituents as well. I think that's the important part because there's so many that don't know about this meter. So.
And Vice Mayor Weber, I saw that you had included it because people were forwarding me your newsletter. You had included it in there, and really, really appreciate you doing that. And because of that, I got some really good feedback from your distribution. So thank you. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Great job, Jeremy, as always. I don't have to tell you that, but I certainly don't mind because I'm a big fan.
Thanks.
Madam Mayor, if I could add a couple things. One, I'd like Jeremy to go back, and because all of us are on social media and questions are raised about data frequently, I think it's really important. I was answering a lot of things on Twitter. People were very grateful this weekend or in the last few days. There's this big misunderstanding, including in the media, about what a licensed bed is and a staff bed. And I really think, Jeremy, if you could take a moment in a minute and just go over that so that as the council members get these questions, they can understand, the terminology. We're talking about a whole different thing. The media likes to report licensed beds. It's irrelevant to our life. It's like saying, how many rooms do you have in a building, like in an office building? But how many rooms are actually being rented by people and people are in them? That's kind of the concept. It's irrelevant to talk about how many rooms you have. What's important to talk about is how many, in this case, beds are available with nurses. So that's one thing if you can go over. Number two, the mayor set up a bi-weekly, so every 2-week press conference to inform the media about what's going on. There's only been 2 of these so far. The second one was just this Tuesday. And I think the idea, Mayor, and you can probably speak to this one, is to get this out on the media's tongues, like they've had the burn code, the air quality code, so it becomes part of our lexicon and how we talk about things. Most people don't want to know the 17 factors that go into the burn code. They just want to know, is it yellow, is it orange, is it red? And therefore, what should I do? And then lastly, you had asked me, Mayor, who was participating, and I'm not going to read everybody, but there are a few key people that I think it's important for the council to know. First of all, a couple of our colleagues, Vaughn Hartung from the county and Chris Dare from Sparks, have been providing liaison back to their organizations. In terms of doctors, we also have a veterinarian Dr. Simmons, and there are, and also Dr. White, who is a dentist, and but Dr. White in particular has been very vocal on, you know, protocols, use of the meter, and that kind of thing. So I think it's definitely want to mention. Yu Yang was on there. He's a brilliant mind, and I think he's with MIT, if I'm not mistaken. And
Yes.
he was doing statistics for the entire country. And so early on, we vetted a lot of stuff with Yu Yang, and he came on and he said we were on the right path. Although he hasn't been able to attend much, he's attended via email, is Chris with the Nevada Health Association, Nevada Hospital Association. So he keeps it all honest. He's the guy who does statistics, many statistics every day. And I think one of the amazing things is all of these statistics are produced by others and are vetted by others. It's really the usage of existing data and refinement of the data. As we get into it, we keep finding things that are not quite right. Trudy Larson with the med school from UNR has been participating. And also, of course, occasionally the heads of all the hospitals. So you'll have Tony Slonim there. You'll have Helen Lindholm. You'll have, I'm sorry, I'm spacing out the name from, I think it's Tracy?
Tiffany Curry.
It's Tiffany. I apologize, Tiffany from St. Mary's. So, and then occasionally you'll have participants from the school board. So Kristen McNeil and a couple school board members that are desperately interested in what is going on with data in our community, trying to make good decisions. And then finally, of course, as a link back to the business community, well, I should have also mentioned Heather Kerwin is on both teams, and she is with the health district. So that is a huge link. If we didn't have her and know what kind of demands are being made on the health district, how they're looking at data, I don't think we would have been nearly as successful. She was a critical add to this process. At our city, Rebecca Venus has kept us on track in terms of communications. She's the one who's pushed for these press conferences and how to do them. And finally, I just want to again mention the business community. So you have people like Ann Silver, who at the end of the day, you know, while this isn't to direct businesses, it is to help people make choices about their own behavior. And it's important to hear that business perspective. And so she and several others have been involved from that perspective. So you had asked me, I gave you some members. There's probably about 10 other people that drop in from time to time, but I would say those are the people been most involved. But Jeremy, could you just explain this license bed, because we're asked these questions constantly about this.
Naomi, just really quickly, what I wanted to tell you to your point, because what you were asking Jeremy about the beds, and I want everyone to understand this because you might have constituents. This is where I'm seeing people really reach out to us, and they might ask you guys about it. When she talks about the bed availability, that data is coming from the hospital association, and that is very different. So when people pull it up, what they say is, well, wait a minute, we're not in crisis. There's only, 68% bed capacity. And then they think, honestly, that you are making it up and creating scare tactics. And that number is really not reflective of what is happening. So I want everyone to be very aware of that if people ask you, because they're going to say to you, and especially today with Renown opening up the parking garage, which should tell us all something that things are getting very severe. But with that being said, they will come back to you and say, well, I pulled up the data from the hospital association and it looks like you have plenty of beds. So you need to realize that that is a false sort of narrative in really the general view of what we're looking at. So Jeremy, just explain that really quick, because I think that's super important for everyone to understand.
Yes, absolutely. I'm happy to take that on. I also will just point out quickly that if you want to learn more about who's who on our website, the covidriskmeter.org website, there is an About Us section. You can go see some of the names and pictures of folks that have been participating. But if I could, I just want to share the screen one more time to take on the staffed bed thing. I did receive this information directly from Christopher Lake at the Nevada Hospital Association with regard to the past several months of staffed bed counts. So the licensed bed count for the North region, which once again is St. Mary's, Renown, Northern Nevada Medical, and Carson Tahoe, that's the region that we use to look at the hospital stats, is 1,687, I think, is the license number of beds. However, if you look at this data that's been provided me by Chris, you can see this first line, staffed inpatient beds. In July, the average was 1,419. August was the same, 1,461 in September, 1,401 in October, and across the whole thing, 1,425. So in terms of the number of staffed beds, and this changes dynamically. There's at least 3 shifts at a hospital during the day. Daily, they only get one time step of what's going on in terms of the staffing. And so that's in the morning. And so maybe the afternoon, evening shift has more people, that's part of it. So that's why we wanted to go with this average approach. So we've been using 1,425 as the kind of universe of total beds that are available across that hospital ecosystem. And then every day, the Nevada Hospital Association also provides a census of the number of patients in the hospital. And that's how we get our utilization number for the hospital capacity on total beds. Yeah. We just divide the, if today, I think it was 1,187, I think was the number today, divided by 1,425 gives us a percent, and that's what we're using.
What's really interesting is that at Renown, and this will tell you the story immediately. When Renown was built, where they were building their new addition and they had their new tower, they got licensed for 200 more beds than they actually even have in the hospital. They just physically don't have these beds. They haven't finished the tower. They've left it for future capacity. So if you include beds that don't even exist, those are the licensed beds. They're licensed to have that many, but they don't have that many. And people constantly use this number, including the media, and they'll show that, again, to the mayor's point, we're 66% full. No, those beds don't even exist in our universe. They physically aren't there. So that is why it's very, very important to point them to this other number that Chris produces. I'm actually going to reach out to the media, Mayor, and Jeremy, and try to get them understanding what these statistics are telling us. There's one more confounding statistic. The health department, the health district, often has published how many people are in the hospital. And those numbers are very different than the numbers that are published by the Hospital Association. Why? Because they're only looking at Washoe County residents in the hospital. They're not looking at the demand on the hospital. So for example, if you've got residents in Carson Tahoe, I might go to Carson Tahoe, it's easier to get to, but they're not counting those people. They're not counting people that are here from Susanville or Winnemucca or Fallon or Fernley. Those are all putting demand on the hospital and causing the hospital to be filled up with both regular patients and COVID patients. So that's a very, very different number. Finally, the data stream from those hospitals to the health district is very intermittent. One hospital didn't report for 3 weeks. Another hospital's IT broke down. A third hospital, one we don't even count, the VA, sent 80 people are in the hospital one day to the health district. So they put 80 people. So it's a very variable number. We think, like for all of us, what we care about is the hospital full or not? Can I get a room at the inn or not? And so that's why staffed beds and looking at how full a hospital is has been very important. I've recommended to the health district that they have both numbers. So
could I be recognized?
Thank you so much. Yes, I'm going to recognize you. Thank you so much, Councilwoman Dewar. And I'm going to Councilwoman Breckus she has a comment.
Well, I really have questions, and this is maybe next stages. And the questions I have are, well, we have some information, but what's next are, I've never been clear if restrictions are being contemplated. I missed the governor's speech the other day, and he said restrictions are being complemented. I heard, but I don't know that the mayor said that she was thinking about imposing some additional restrictions. So, from my perspective, that's the big question I'm wondering. And I think because, we sometimes, if we leave town, we go up to California and my family's there. And they have this county tier thing, and it's very clear what each tier means. It's connected. So you get all this data that TMRPA has, and what it means in terms of restrictions. So they're linked. And I'm just not very aware of how we're thinking about that here. Maybe I've missed it all. The second one as we escalate tremendously, and I think it's fair to say that we are escalating tremendously, is a couple months ago, there seemed to be some tracing information that was available where people were contracting or where it was getting traced to. So then you knew, well, I'm not doing that. Or, so that seems to be missing. And also when you get into these numbers, where is your risk at? That's what I'm trying to understand. If there's anything that people can be told, don't go there, don't do that, that's not a good thing.
Yeah, I think I can answer part of this, and you can jump in, Jeremy and Naomi. She had some sort of technical data questions a little bit for you, Jeremy, I think, so hold on to those. But what I would say, Councilwoman Breckus, it's a very, very comprehensive discussion, and all those things that you brought up are things that we are discussing. It's very interesting because that's one of the deep dives of looking at where are we seeing the biggest problems, right? And everyone seems to, always jump out and say, oh, it's, we think it's schools and things like that. But you really have to, when you look at the schools, you have to look at a school by a case-by-case basis. It doesn't make sense to shut down one school that's not having any issues versus one that is maybe having a major outbreak, right? And we're really not seeing that particularly in the schools. And they think it's because the teachers are doing a pretty good job and there's protocol at school. Where we are really seeing the problem, and it makes a lot of sense, is private gatherings, even these, smaller and larger private gatherings, because what has happened is we all have sort of our circle of trust and friends, and when they invite us over, we think to ourselves, well, they're not sick, that's someone I know, they wouldn't be asymptomatic and have it. And so there's a lot of gatherings going on within your sort of sphere of influence that we all probably take, for granted, that one of them could easily be sick. And so they are really seeing a lot of that. And also, they haven't traced it back to, any businesses that I am aware of in any specific industry. Now, I don't think they brought up the bars and the restaurants on our last call, Naomi, and you might be able to remind me. But it's really more of these sort of gatherings. And then we saw a really large gathering for the holidays, obviously with Halloween, with our college students, and it really was out of control. And we are seeing that age group kind of, I would say, be at the forefront of, some of these spreading events. And that's where we're really concerned, is typically in these private gatherings where I think we all think it's very trustworthy. So it's been really hard to say, okay, where exactly is this causing the biggest issues? And then I think everyone's got to remember we are still under the governor's directive. So there, if we're going to do something, we sort of have to work through them. And then if it's something that we can implement, I believe, and I would say this to Dylan, I don't know if he's on here, but that it would have to be, am I right, Dylan, unanimous vote by the council? And my thought was, you guys, I think this has always been our fear, sort of the perfect storm coming down the pipe right now because of the holiday season. And really what the governor was stressing of saying, hey, in this next 2 weeks, if we don't modify behavior, we are going to be in some big trouble. Today you see the parking garage opening up at Reno, and things are very serious, and people don't quite understand that it's people are saying, oh, there's no beds. That's also not the issue. The biggest issue is our healthcare workers. They didn't sign up for this for 7 to 9 months. They are exhausted. Not only are they exhausted, you guys, they are getting sick. And that is a big problem. And so now we're starting to see this whole thing collapse. And I think right now, if there's one ask I could ask of any of you, you guys all have a platform, you have a bully pulpit, you all have Twitter, you all have Facebook. I would just ask you to please ask people to have some grace and mercy for our healthcare system right now, because then what happens is standards of care get triggered,
And that can be extremely dicey and a fine line. And really, then you're making the decision of a patient that comes in that has a higher success rate of surviving versus one that doesn't. Maybe it's someone of an older age. And that process is very scary. I don't know if you guys understand what that process is, but it basically goes to sort of an independent board at the hospital to make that decision. So it's not the treating physician or for anyone treating, these medical providers, right? Because then it takes out sort of the politics and also becoming close with the patient. Can you imagine now all of a sudden your life and death is going to an independent board of someone that hasn't treated you, doesn't know you, and has to make that decision whether you're going to get treated or not, or maybe it's a ventilator you might get, you might not. And that is where I think people don't realize that this is extremely scary. And now the other, I think, misconception that everyone has to realize here, and this is a big one, is yes, therapeutics are out now. We know how to deal with this virus better. No one is going to deny that. But what you need to understand is there's a whole other tier called COVID haulers. And what a COVID hauler is someone that has had COVID, and now they are seeing the ramifications of what has happened, to their heart, to their brain. They're now seeing that people are having brain disorder from it, massive vertigo, and this is the long-term effects. It would be like going to war. And yes, unfortunately, so sad, people don't ever come back from war. And the ones that do, we end up spending a long time, helping those people deal with the battle wounds, right? So you need to think of it like that. So when you have friends out there that say, yeah, but no one dies from it anymore, or I'm just going to get it, and that's okay if I get it, you better be sadly mistaken. And there are some people that we all know that are on Facebook right now that honestly did not take it seriously, and they're sharing their stories. And it is frightening. So if I could just plead to any of you, I really need you to ask people, especially right now, to help us get through the holidays. And we're lucky a vaccine is on its way, but again, that's going to take some time. So we have to be realistic. And that's really my plea, because quite honestly, I'm really scared for our entire community. And look, if you look at other states, 50%, they are seeing 50% percentages of when they test that their community is testing positive. Now, I think we are right now, Naomi, we're at what, 13%, 12%?
Correct, about 13%, I believe. And
Yeah, we went up to 14 today.
14%.
Today it's 14, and then remember, that doesn't include, you guys, the people that didn't get tested but stayed at home because they didn't feel well, right? So some of that information is not, as accurate really as it could be because of the testing, capability or lack thereof, right? So that's just my point. I want everyone to take this seriously. I can't even begin to tell you enough. So thanks so much.
Mayor, thank you so much. I'm not sure if I should be conducting the meeting, but I'm going to move on. And thank you so much for your comments.
If I may, can I respond to the other
yes, go ahead, please.
questions just quickly? To your other questions, Councilwoman Breckus, contact tracing as a data point was not something early on even that was available from a daily basis. And so that was one of our kind of goals, was to have data available daily to bring you to this. But even more recently, it's gotten worse. And given similar fatigue and folks being lost to the disease itself, not lost permanently, but temporarily, through a quarantine at the health district, the contact tracing efforts they're overwhelmed right now. There's money, but they don't necessarily have the tech support or the staff to bring on to really enhance that contact tracing. And more data is coming out or evidence rather, that this kind of disease is one of those that is incredibly difficult to do the contact tracing on. And so we haven't brought that in directly, but we do speak with Heather Kerwin. She's the lead epidemiologist at the county, constantly about the concept of contact tracing. So I think if you really want to learn more about that, she would be the person to talk to, and we could make that happen. But then further, the intervention question, which I think is a good one. All along, I think we've been wary, like we told the school district, hey, don't just read this readout that we give you from this meter and close schools or don't close schools. but use it as a piece of information to use in your decision making, because it is based on the data that's available, the real data. I've been talking with Dylan and City Manager Thornley and County Manager Eric Brown in terms of how this meter and the risk setting that it produces could be used as one of the means to guide interventions that could come down as part of a response plan to the governor's task force. And so I think exactly what those interventions will be not necessarily up to me directly, but we're certainly here to support and to, definitely want to use the meter as one of the things that informs what kind of interventions should be brought in.
Yeah, I mean, if I could just answer, I really think tying that to, if you get here, this means that, it just provides the certainty out into the business community. If someone knows if I go to purple tier next week, I'm not going to put in this order there. I think that's what I'm seeing over in California. And I don't know, how spiraling we're getting. I'll just share, because the mayor said share. We lost a family member yesterday to COVID. So in El Paso, Texas, which has gotten completely out of control. And if we're a month away from there, good God help us.
Yeah, anyway, I'm going to move us along. You guys, thanks so much, because I know Jeremy's got to get going. Jeremy, you're amazing. We love you to pieces. Keep being amazing, and we'll see you soon. I just know you've got a crazy busy schedule, so I'm going to move us along.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Yes.
Councilwoman Jardin had something to say.
Oh, yeah, go right ahead.
Thank you very much, and thank you for all of the dialogue. And I think we've all been kind of struggling as to, how do we break through to those that, are resistant or maybe not taking it as seriously as we all need to be. And I have recently been appointed to the board of directors of St. Mary's, and one of the things that is kind of concerning that's coming out of some of those that are working at that hospital is there seems to be a sense amongst some of the doctors and the nurses that, people are kind of not being empathetic to their plight, as you said, Madam Mayor, about the struggles that they're going through. And I liken it to, they were asked to run a marathon and they got close to the end of the marathon and someone popped out and said, guess what, you got to do it again. And they're just not feeling like there's anybody standing on the race path cheering them on. It's more like almost like you're not doing your job, and they're just not feeling particularly supported right now. And so I know the Feed Our Heroes group, I've been in communication with Kaya Stanley about how we could maybe re-up that effort with them to do some sort of recognitions of our healthcare workers, to let them know that we have not forgotten about them. We still support them 150%, and we are really here with them to help them through this most difficult time. They just need to hear from us that we care, we're thinking about them, and we support them in this. They're understaffed, they're overworked, and they're frankly feeling a little bit underappreciated. So, and just from as to Councilwoman Breckis's story, I last night had a family member who was short of breath and needed to go to the hospital. And we had to tell this family member that we couldn't give her a ride to the hospital because we feared that it might have been COVID. And she went and waited almost 5 hours in the emergency room alone and got treated in the hallway. There were no beds. I mean, there was nowhere for her. Luckily, it doesn't appear to be COVID, but she got sent home with some medications, and now it's the waiting game. That's the reality. And until it's your family member or someone close, people just aren't taking it very seriously. And we're just pleading to please take it seriously.
Yeah, that's why I ask all of you guys, because you have a platform. So please, please, please do that. And don't be worried if you are called a communist liar, which, I threw that on my Twitter and it went crazy. But I think to Naoma's point and Jenny's point, one of the things you guys remember too, it's not just COVID we're treating. Other people are going to have other conditions like you just talked about, Naoma. And so you stack that on top of COVID, that's where I say, you know, we're getting into this perfect storm. So thanks you guys for everything and being so supportive of this initiative, and Jeremy and the entire group who's come together. It really means a lot to us. So thank you.
There's a lot of people out there that are just in denial about this. I mean, I keep getting these tweets. Well, I was over at XYZ hospital parking lot and it was empty. There's no room at the inn, guys. The REMS is what they call on the wall, waiting with patients in their ambulances for 2 and 3 hours that they cannot offload into the emergency room because the ICU is full. They can't move them out of the emergency room. And 85% full, which is what we are, is considered nationally like 100% full. You still have to change the beds, clean the rooms. There's got to be some amount of empty beds so you can like move the beds around, all that stuff. So we are virtually there, and that is why, to the mayor's point, we're opening up the care unit. I don't think they ever thought we'd get to the point. I don't know about you, but if I'm having any hospital problem and I'm going to be on a cot, an army cot outside with a very thin mattress in a, you know, in a room that looks like an army medic tent, basically very barren, no windows, no personal bathroom, no nothing. That's tough. That is really, really tough.
Okay, I think we have to go to attorney-client. Am I right, Madam Clerk? I'm going to send it back to you.
Madam Mayor, you do have an attorney-client meeting scheduled. However, if it is the pleasure of the body, the remainder of your agenda could be rather brief. If we continue through, that would be my recommendation, and then we take your attorney-client directly thereafter.
Okay, let's get through the agenda. Sound good, everyone?
Thank you. With that, moving on to item D5. This is a brief update from Dylan Shaver on your coronavirus relief fund allocations.
All right, Dylan, make it quick, snappy.
You took all your time.
Message received. So to that end, I will start basically in the middle of our presentation here. And as I have mentioned previously, that we have a handful of touch points on this item, on the coronavirus relief funding item. We are at your third of 4 touch points. Council has approved the many different buckets, the categories that you could change it, that you would use to get this money out into the community and do as much good for as many people as possible. We've been coming back and asking for changes. So your last meeting, for example, we moved money, enhanced the projects for the unsheltered to the tune of $1.5 million. We enhanced business relief programs to the tune of $1.2 million. And then adjusted remaining residential relief programs to the Reno Housing Authority that would have given them access to an additional $1.2 million. May need some flexibility here in conversations with the Housing Authority. They do not believe that they're going to be able to spend any money beyond what we in the state have given them. So they've spent through the city's entire allocation. They have a significant chunk of resources from the state, and their larger concern is going to be about processing. So what we may end up having to do is use some of these resources to assist the Housing Authority in their processing, what I understand are about 900 backlogged applications that they're going through. Sort of where we are in your instruction from last week. We heard additional feedback last week that did not require a motion, that I just wanted to update you quickly on. You wanted outdoor space making to allow for better social distancing. We have tasked a staff member who many of you know and love, Mr. Brad Fitch, specifically to that interdepartmental effort, which involves working with our parks, our special events teams, our community development team to do what we can and accomplish what you're looking for us to do there. You talked about finding more ways to protect our employees at the city and allow for safer public interaction. We continue to assess that. Our engineering team has been looking at the disinfectant cubes that one of you recommended to evaluate their suitability for the facility. We're working with potential contractors to enhance our remote meeting. That is a continuous project subject to the limitations that I brought up last week. And then finally, working more aggressively toward finding mental health solutions the mayor, if I may, you set us up with great folks in the technology space who have found a great intersection between mental health and the technology that we all have at our fingers that'll allow us to go down this road a little further. And then we'll have some conversations about this further in your meeting next Wednesday with the county and the city of Sparks. We only have one recommendation today, which would be to enhance the communications line item with an additional $1 million. As we discussed last week, Ms. Venus and her team have done an excellent job both here at the city and regionally to get the word out, to work with communities in need and so forth. An area that we have not addressed yet, however, is funds can be used to remarket facilities and communities to publicize activities, either the resumption activities or the new way that we handle these activities in the world of COVID. We also know from the governor's task force and from conversations like this one that between now and really through the winter, this is a communications play. And Madam Mayor, you distilled it so succinctly. Everybody now has a story about this, and it's about, finding a way to message to people to break through the COVID fatigue, to break through the malaise. That's going to require extra resources. The tracing, measurement, prevention, and research bucket had $1.2 million in its original allocation. We spent it had 2.2 in its total allocation. We spent, about $1 million on various things, vaccination things, and on the effluent study with the city of Sparks up at the university. This would allow just over $100,000 to remain in that particular bucket. Again, none of these are static. We will continue to, seek adjustments and augmentations where it's necessary. Just want to make very clear, safety remarketing and this sort of publicity is an allowable use under the guidance. I just wanted to make sure I provided that for your review here. That is our only request. The next step will be your final step on this project. December 2nd at the City Council meeting is where we will ask for a final reallocation into all the various categories, and we will also bring a fail-safe in the form of a resolution that would basically be instructions to the city manager of how to dispose of the funds before the end of the year. With that, I think I'll land back on our recommendations and, of course, take any feedback you have. Madam Clerk, Madam Mayor, opportunity.
Thank you, Dylan. I just want to, I'm going to hand it over to Councilwoman Jordan.
Thank you very much. The only comment I have, thank you, Dylan, for all your work on this. I know it's been a Herculean task on top of all your regular duties to pull all this together, and it hasn't gone unrecognized. And I know it changes as it seems like every day it changes a little bit. You've always been very flexible, and I appreciate that. Madam Mayor, and to my fellow council members, I don't know if there is any sort of appetite, as to we were discussing earlier, the need for or the desire for support for some of our healthcare workers and the strain in which they are under. And if there might be an opportunity to maybe partner with the Feed Our Heroes group to, I don't know which bucket it would come out of, if it would come out of the food delivery bucket, or if it would be, I'm not really sure, because it kind of hits multiple points. If there's an opportunity, and I don't think it would have to be a huge amount, to partner with that entity to provide some funds so they can re-up their efforts of recognition and food delivery for our healthcare workers during this second marathon, as we'll call it.
And Dylan, I'm sorry to just jump in, but maybe part of the thought too there is I know we gave some, or if it's allocated to the food bank, but maybe a partnership with them so it stays under that provision of what you're doing here. I don't know. Just a thought.
I think that we have got enough feedback just from this conversation and the funds remaining in that particular bucket to proceed with that.
Awesome. Good.
And Madam Mayor, just to kind of close it out, going through sort of that entity organization, it does two things. It helps support our businesses because the food in which they provide comes from our local restaurants, which, as we know, are hurting and are probably going to be hurting more as some of these restrictions and lockdowns and people are going to be staying home a little bit more. So that supports them. I don't know if there's an opportunity with the food trucks. I'm just not sure, but that's just putting that out there. Like I said, I don't think it would be a huge amount, but it could make a huge difference. So thank you.
Yeah, awesome. Okay. I can't see anyone else, so I guess I'm going to just move along. Madam Clerk?
This is Councilmember Breckus.
Okay, Councilman Breckus, 3 minutes. Just trying to push us along.
Okay. Let me get my timer then. Sorry about that. I am supportive of getting some money to the RSCBA, you know, I don't know, $1 million, but maybe $500,000 or so, with the caveat that while, you know, tourism is going to take a long climb to come out, that they come to the table to help our residents in some way, you know, that the need for outdoor space, the need for their facilities, you know, which somehow are you know, sometimes off limits to us, even the ones they manage of ours. If they could start to come to the table and use that, you know, with some of the thinking about how, while tourism is ticking up slowly, they can pivot to help solve some of the community's needs, I think that would be very helpful message to get over to them and you know, make them help us do what we have to do. I know they stood up a hospital at one point, but maybe there's other things that they could do, you know, recreationally wise.
Yeah, very good point. Because those, and I think it really is essential. You got to remember, tourism has been so hard hit, and it's going to take a while to bring them back. So any collaboration we can do with them is really essential. And we will be having that meeting in the next week or two, I think, and talking about that, the RSCBA. But I appreciate the council's support on that because tourism is just decimated. So thanks you guys for recognizing that. I know that would go a long way with them. And I'm open to any ideas. Email me with any ideas and thoughts you have that I can present to them at the board meeting. I would love to do that too. So thanks. All right,
Madam Mayor? Just real quick.
Naomi, 3 minutes.
Yep. I just want to make sure, Dylan, if you could reach out to the health department and see if there's anything else we can do. They have people working in the hall. They have people working in their conference rooms. They've hired contact tracers. It's not so much even contact tracers. You know, when they report like 3,000 people have COVID in our community, well, they haven't had contact. Like once the people get COVID and they get better, like they don't always call in and say, hey, I'm better now. And now we only have 2,500 people with COVID in our community. In other words, they're not being able to do their normal function, never mind a contact trace, but just the people that have identified, hey, I have COVID. They're having a hard time managing them, getting data from them, you know, having them in their database. I don't know what else we can do. I know they have some of their own money, but I don't know if it's more of an in-kind, like, I don't know, but it just strikes me that they are still struggling very much to handle this pandemic. And I don't know what else we can do for them. The second thing is that I had a reach out this weekend was we've made the computers available, but have we put any money into making computer service available so that those people have the Wi-Fi? I never really heard close the loop. A lot of families don't have that Wi-Fi access, or maybe not fast enough to support 4 kids or 2 kids in their family. Do you have any info on that, Dylan?
So we did work with the school district on that component prior to our item, and I think you're asking specifically about providing that service to a private residence. That's not a conversation we've had. We've talked about it more in the macro sense of, you know, the mobile Wi-Fi facilities, the usage of our facilities for their Wi-Fi and things.
Well, as long as it's covered. I just worry that there's people out there, we may be giving them a really nice little portable computer, but they don't have Wi-Fi or the ability to keep it going for 6 months. And should we be like prepaying residents, just like we helped with sewer, water bills, we've helped with rent? You know, is this something we could give a direct give to help offset the cost of using that computer? That's a question. So just something to not forget about, not necessarily reallocation. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, at this time,
Okay, moving on right along.
we would be looking for a motion to accept staff recommendation from council.
All right. I have a motion from Councilwoman Breckus, a motion from Councilwoman Dewar. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay.
you. Madam Mayor, item D6 is the acceptance of the formal audit from the building permitting process. We do have Emily Kidd available to answer questions if council has any. Otherwise, you can move forward with the motion to accept the report.
All right, thank you so much. I don't think I see anyone with questions, so let's move to
accept.
I've got a motion
And a second.
and all those in
I'm going to
favor.
make a comment, Madam Mayor.
Okay.
At my agenda review, it sounded like, quote, they're working on it. And I think that this is the third formal audit follow-up and they're still working on it. So I think that it is basically getting all the numbers lined up and so that we have accurate tracking of building permits and activities. And so I'm hoping on the fourth audit follow-up, I mean, there wouldn't be all these audit follow-ups if they were doing the thing. So maybe by the fourth audit follow-up, maybe our manager could have helped them cross the finish line to actually implement whatever it is they need to implement to kind of implement the recommendations from the auditor. Okay, just something for the go forward.
Okay, anything else? All right.
Nope.
So I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Okay,
Thank
Madam
you.
Clerk.
Item E1, ordinance introduction, a bill to be read by the city attorney.
This is ordinance introduction, bill number 7161, ordinance to amend Title 6, Chapter 6.06 of the Reno Municipal Code entitled Rules of the Road, Restrictions as to Speed, together with other matters which are properly related thereto. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Move to approve.
I've got a motion. Do I have a second?
Second, Jordan.
Favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Madam Clerk.
Madam Mayor, item G11, appointment to the Capital Surcharge Advisory Committee. There's no one liaison. You do have one member, so you can appoint away.
Move to appoint Mr. Boulware.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Madam Clerk.
G12, appointment to the Arts and Culture Commission. Councilmember Dewar is liaison at this time.
All right,
Yeah,
Councilwoman.
I want to clarify, did I hear you say 2 or 3?
There are 3 seats and 2 appointment seats, so there's actually a total of 5 available appointments on this board.
That's what I thought, but I called Megan and she seemed to think there was only 3. So I just want to get clear. I am prepared to make 5, but I want to get clarity.
So to clarify in the record, and this was something that we have discussed, appointments and reappointments all need to be brought forward to the Reno City Council. Reappointments do not automatically occur on this board. So there was
So there are though 5.
There are 5. There are 5 vacant
Okay.
seats.
All right, I am prepared for that. First, I'd like to reappoint Doug Irwin and Sean Richardson. And
Second.
adding, okay, all right, we could do 2 motions.
We can take
Second.
one motion.
Okay. For the 3 additional appointments, I would like to appoint Eric Anderson. Some of you may have gotten acquainted with him. He did the song for the city of Reno. He's a tremendous performer. I think he'll really fill that extra niche of bringing music into our arts and culture in a more affirmative way. I'd like to recommend BC Ledesma. She is a member of the Pyramid Lake Paiute tribe, and she's a real activist, and I think she has a lot to offer there. And then finally, I'd like to recommend Mark Salinas. Mark was recently the Arts and Culture Commissioner, staff person in Carson City for Arts and Culture, similar to Alexis or Megan. And I think he'd bring a brand new perspective too from another town. He's just recently moved to Reno. So those are my 5 recommendations.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Great selections. Great. Love all of them. Okay, next.
Item H1, update from council members on boards and commissions.
I have none. Anyone else? Seeing that there are none. We don't have to take a motion on that.
We do not, and we have no public hearing, so we'll transition to general closing public comment. Should be noted, this public comment section is reserved for items that are not specifically on this agenda or items that were received after 4 p.m. yesterday, the business day preceding the council meeting. We received public comment from Elizabeth Bittner in response to support for Henry Sotelo for RMC judge, and comment from Alexis Motorex with AGC in support of, in opposition to a previous item on this agenda. Also, we received a public comment from Randy Canali, in which we will play at this time.
Thank you.
Who are the registered apprenticeship programs under the Northern Nevada Building and Construction Trades Council and their affiliated contractors. I would like to extend a great thank you to Mayor Sheevy and all the council members for handing out a proclamation recognizing this week as National Apprenticeship Week. Building and construction trade apprenticeship programs are the ones training our workforce in advanced construction for all the challenges that are coming to our area and are responsible for supplying the manpower needed to continue to allow Northern Nevada to be such an attractive place for new businesses and industry and keep Northern Nevada's economy diversified and moving forward. Construction, also being deemed an essential industry, has also played a large part in keeping our economy going during the pandemic. Construction apprenticeship has, in fact, expanded during this time. We sincerely hope that our council members and any other interested parties take us up on our offer to tour any of our training facilities to see how we are meeting these challenges head on. Thank you again for your recognition, and hope everyone stays safe and well during these difficult times.
Great, love it.
Madam Mayor, with that, we have no further general public comment, and just to reiterate for the record, we will not be opening the Redevelopment Agency Board meeting today, as that item has been withdrawn. So you would be looking for a motion to adjourn at this time.
All right, thank you.
Adjourn.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. And we will be now going into an attorney-client. Did you send us